Chapter 361. The long-faced commandery princess who had spoken earlier chuckled. Yan, I thought you would be with Marquis Ning. Lan Luxiao was a little embarrassed. You must be joking, commandery princess Qingling. Marquis Ning is of noble status. Yan is just a commoner. She is out of my league. I think you're not afraid of her. You're afraid of her, ah. Another young man joked. The seven of them burst into laughter. They looked at Ning Xuema subtly. Obviously they were laughing at her. Ning Xuema originally wanted to leave. However, she smiled and walked up to the pavilion. Brother Huang, Brother Meng? So you're here too. What a coincidence. The three men in the pavilion changed their expressions. Ning Xuema was standing at the entrance of the pavilion. They could not hide. They could only exchange greetings with Ning Xuema with pale faces. Ning Xuema's bright eyes were like flowing water. She glanced at them one by one. She seemed to find them pleasing to the eye, especially Brother Huang who had joked with Nan Luxiao. Brother Huang, I haven't forgotten you since we parted 2 days ago. Brother Huang's handsome face was pale. He took 2 steps back and forced a smile. Marquis Ning, you must be joking. Ning Xuema's small mouth slightly pursed. Her eyes became even more affectionate. I'm not joking. Ever since I met Brother Huang the day before yesterday, Brother Huang's every word and action kept flashing in my mind. She leaned towards him as she spoke. That Brother Huang was so flustered that he took 2 more steps back. Unprepared, he tripped on the steps under his feet and fell to the ground with a plop. His butt hurt from the fall. Marquis Ning? He was so scared that he could not speak clearly. He was so timid. Ning Xuema turned around and ignored him. Her gaze fell on Brother Meng's face. Brother Meng, you're handsome. You're a dragon among men? Brother Meng's face turned pale. He forced a smile and said, Marquis Ning, I don't deserve your praise. Of course. Xuema has never seen such a special and handsome person like Brother Meng. Ning Xuema's pair of beautiful eyes met Brother Meng's big and small eyes. Brother Meng, no matter how I look at you, you are different from others. Brother Meng, who had a pair of different-sized eyes, turned even paler. Little Ku, Brother Meng, you don't have to be so modest. In the future, Xuema will definitely put in a good word for you in front of His Majesty. Before she could finish her words, Brother Meng's handsome face had already turned green. He retreated several steps. I can't afford it. I have a bunch of problems. Marquis Ning doesn't know. What's wrong with you? Ning Xuema took 2 more steps forward and blinked her big eyes. I snore and grind my teeth in my sleep. My feet smell bad. Brother Meng listed several of his problems in one breath. After he finished, Ning Xuema didn't show any expression, but the other girls in the pavilion couldn't help but stay away from him. Ning Xuema looked at him and said in a gentle voice, Snore and grind your teeth in your sleep is more manly. As for the smell of your feet, you can wash them often. It's not a big problem. Brother Meng was about to cry. He made up his mind and said, I also have a bad habit of farting. This time not only the other girls retreated but also the other young masters. Ning Xuema sighed softly. That's a pity. She finally let him go. Brother Meng and Brother Huang, who had just stood up, looked like they had just escaped from death. They looked at each other. Brother Meng wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. He wanted to continue to seduce the Prime Minister's daughter who was interested in him just now. Chapter 362. Unexpectedly, when the lady saw him approaching, she immediately turned around and left. Everyone please go ahead. I'll go out and take a look. Brother Meng did not give up and wanted to follow. Miss Lan, I'll accompany you. No need, young Master Meng, please go ahead. Miss Lan quickly walked away as if she was avoiding the plague. Brother Meng was speechless. His ailments are false. He wanted to defend himself, but when he turned around and saw Ning Xuema's smiling eyes, he swallowed his words back into his stomach. Ning Xuema's gaze turned back to Lan Luxiao. She wanted to let him go for Lan Yufeng's sake, but his gloating expression just now made her unhappy. Yan, you said you'd accompany me for a walk? I suddenly felt pain in my leg. Lan Luxiao suddenly took a step back and sat on the stone bench in the pavilion. Pain in your leg? Don't tell me you sprained it? Come, let me take a look. Ning Xuema also sat on the stone bench. Lan Luxiao almost fell over on the stone bench. No need, no need. He looked up and suddenly saw something. He shouted, Your Highness. Ning Xuema was stunned. She followed Lan Luxiao's gaze and her body suddenly stiffened. Jiyun Huang was indeed standing not far from the pavilion. A month had passed and his injuries were almost healed. Other than his pale face, there was not much of a sickly look on his face. Seeing him, Ning Xuema didn't feel surprised. What made her surprised was that there were two people standing next to the crown prince. One was Lan Yufeng, and the other was the person Ning Xuema did not want to see again even if she was beaten to death, Han Shangyue. The three of them were the real giants among men. When they stood together, even the moon in the sky seemed to have lost its radiance. While Ning Xuema was still in a daze, the other men and women in the pavilion had already rushed out. Greetings to His Highness the Crown Prince could be heard everywhere. Although these people were paying their respects to Ji Yunhuang, their eyes were all attracted by Han Shangyue. They were all secretly guessing the identity of this handsome and cold young master. Ji Yunhuang nodded his head slightly, indicating for everyone to stand up. However, his gaze landed on Ning Xuema. Xuema. There was a hint of disapproval in his eyes. Obviously, the scene of Ning Xuema flirting with the handsome guys just now fell into his eyes. Ning Xuema cupped her hands in greeting. Your Highness, I trust you have been well since we last met. Your complexion looks much better. This is all thanks to you. Ji Yunhuang sighed. Have you been well these days? After visiting Ning Xuema that time, he was grounded by Lu Hinti. He was not allowed to leave the Crown Prince's mansion on the grounds that he had to recuperate. Naturally, he could not go to Marquis Ning's mansion again. Very well. Ning Xuema smiled and answered straightforwardly. How is your Highness' injury? Has it fully recovered? Ning Xuema reached out her hand to check Ji Yunhuang's pulse. Ji Yunhuang's eyes moved slightly but he did not dodge. Ning Xuema's fingers touched his pulse. She paused for a moment and smiled. Your Highness has recovered very well. It was even better than what she had expected. Logically speaking, his injury would at most be 60% healed and he would need to rest for a few more months. However, after checking his pulse, she found that his injury was 88% healed. His psychokinesis had also recovered by more than half, which was out of her expectations. She suddenly felt a chill run down her spine and the hairs on her back stood on end. She subconsciously raised her head and her eyes met with Master Han Shanyue's. Chapter 363. Great Master Han Shanyue's eyes were calm, but it made Ning Xuema secretly shiver. She subconsciously let go of Ji Yunhuang's wrist. This is all thanks to Xuema, your medical skills are brilliant. I will never forget your kindness in saving my life. However, for me to be able to recover so quickly, it is also thanks to Great Master Han Shanyue's miraculous medicine. Ji Yunhuang sighed and introduced him to the others. This is Great Master Han Shanyue. The people present had naturally heard of Han Shanyue's name. Because he was too mysterious, there were very few people who had seen his real face. Now that they heard that he was the famous Great Master, they naturally went up to greet him. Strangely enough, although Great Master Han Shanyue had been standing there quietly, and the lanterns hanging around him were bright enough, they did not seem to shine on his face. Everyone looked at him as if there was a layer of fog behind him, and they could not see his face clearly. They could only faintly feel that he was extremely beautiful, so beautiful that he did not have the slightest bit of mortal aura. Ji Yunhuang and Lan Yufeng could be considered as handsome men, but when they stood next to him, it was like a bright pearl compared to the bright moon. His expression seemed to be indifferent. When everyone greeted him, he did not open his mouth and only nodded slightly, which was considered as a response. Ning Xuema did not want to exchange greetings with him. It was because of this fellow's mouth that her name as a jinx spread so far and wide. Moreover, she felt that this fellow seemed to be targeting her. She did not know if it was an illusion, but she felt that his gaze was especially cold when he looked at her. His gaze swept past her body and moved away. When he looked at the others, his gaze seemed to be more normal. Although it was still indifferent and had an unapproachable alienation, at least it did not make people's hair stand on end. Meow. That day didn't she just hug him and kiss his face in a fit of pique? Why was he so cold when he saw her? Moreover, he had even thrown her down the stairs. She was magnanimous and did not seek revenge on him. Taking advantage of the time when Ji Yunhuang and the other two were surrounded by the young men and women, Ning Xuema quietly left. She didn't want to have too much contact with Ji Yunhuang. After all, he was the crown prince and she, a heavenly calamity star, was destined to have no fate with him. Furthermore, she didn't even have the slightest bit of thoughts towards him, so there was no need for her to be involved with him. As she walked forward quickly, the hairs on her back stood on end, as if that person was staring at her again. She subconsciously turned around to take a look. Because there was an endless stream of people coming, it was only natural that these people would go and greet Ji Yunhuang. In just a short while, the three of them were surrounded by 3 layers of people. She couldn't even see their shadows. It seemed that he had been oversensitive. Ning Xuema shook her head and strode away to wander around. She wandered around and unknowingly wandered to a spacious area with sparse flowers and trees. A large lake appeared in front of her eyes. The lakeside was paved with large and small snow-white pebbles. Occasionally, there would be clusters of wild flowers swaying gently in the breeze. A round moon had just risen in the sky, and its reflection in the lake sparkled like a pool of silver fragments. This place was relatively remote, and the nearest lantern was a few dozen meters away. The surroundings were only illuminated by the moonlight. On the contrary, the scenery was even more beautiful. Ning Xuema stood by the lakeside and admired the scenery. Kiran was mischievous and had long jumped off Ning Xuema's shoulder and was playing happily by the lakeside. Ning Xuema looked at the clear lake and felt playful. She simply walked to the lakeside and sat down. Monthly votes requesting monthly votes. Chapter 364. Ning Xuema looked at the clear water of the lake and decided to play around. She walked to the lakeside and sat down. She took off her shoes and socks and soaked her feet in the lake. She gently patted the water to play. While she was having fun, a voice suddenly sounded behind her. "Miss, this place is dangerous, please stay away." The voice was rather masculine and magnetic. Ning Xuema turned around and was stunned. She almost suspected that she was in a dream. From behind the rockery not far away, a person walked out in big strides. The moonlight was like silver, illuminating his face very clearly. That person was wearing an officer's uniform. He had a high nose bridge and deep blue eyes. One look and you could tell that he was not from Chongkong country. What surprised Ning Xuema was not this, but his appearance was very similar to a person that definitely would not appear in this world. Stallone. He was 80% similar to the young Stallone. Suddenly seeing her idol appear here, even if Ning Xuema was calm, she was still stunned for a moment and then jumped up. Because she was too shocked, she was not able to stand firm. Her body swayed and she almost fell into the lake. "Be careful." Stallone dashed over and grabbed her hand. Ning Xuema took the opportunity to stand firm and stared at him. "You are?" She could not be dreaming again, right? Stallone saw that she stood firm and immediately let go of her hand and took a step back. "I am Shi Tianlong, this lake is very deep. It is not safe for Miss to be here alone. I hope that Miss can go somewhere else." Shi Tianlong's name was actually somewhat similar to his. What kind of joke is God playing on me? She actually met an idol-level person. "Thank you for your help, General Shi." Ning Xuema smiled slightly and looked at him calmly. This person looked to be around 18 or 19 years old. He had a cold and tough temperament, with the unique iron-blooded aura of a general on the battlefield. "General Shi, are you also here to attend the garden party?" Ning Xuema was rarely in the mood to chat with others. "I was ordered to protect the safety of Qinfang Garden, and I just happened to be patrolling here. Miss, please leave this place quickly." Shi Tianlong bowed again, and a hint of impatience flashed in his eyes. He was a general who came from the battlefield, and the people he made were all hot-blooded men. He would rather fight on the battlefield than stay here to protect these young masters and young ladies who only knew how to eat, drink and play. In this short period of time, he had already chased her away 3 times. Ning Xuema felt a little amused and looked at him sideways. "You don't know me? Mrs. Body is priceless, so this lowly general naturally has no chance to meet you. Miss, please. I'm Ning Xuema." Ning Xuema introduced herself. She believed that he must have heard of her. Sure enough, Shi Tianlong was stunned. A pair of sharp eyes fell on her body. "You are the daughter of Marquis Jingyuan Ning Shuai?" "That's right." Ning Xuema smiled. "She's also known as the Heavenly Calamity Lonely Star. You should have heard of her, right?" Shi Tianlong was solemn and respectfully bowed to her. "Miss Ning, I was rude just now, please forgive me. This lowly general has heard of your father's achievements in the army, and I admire him very much. It is my honor to meet you today. You're not afraid of me?" Ning Xuema looked at him with a smile. "Of course not. This lowly general came from the battlefield and I only believe in strength. I don't believe in nonsense. This lowly general has heard of Miss for a long time. I heard that Miss's medical skills are amazing, and you saved our crown prince." Shi Tianlong actually spoke a lot. It was rare to meet someone who knew her identity and was not afraid of her. Chapter 365. It was rare for Xuema to meet someone who was not afraid of her even after knowing her identity. Especially when this person had the looks of her idol. Ning Xuema felt very gratified. She sat there and chatted with him while putting on her shoes and socks. Shi Tianlong was really a gentleman. When Ning Xuema was putting on her shoes, he automatically turned his back to her. Ning Xuema was putting on one of her shoes. When she turned her head and saw him like this, she found it funny. She was only showing her feet. Did he have to avoid her like this? She turned her eyes slightly and suddenly cried out softly. Her body tilted to the side of the lake. Since Shi Tianlong was a general, he was naturally observant and alert. When he heard Ning Xuema's cry, he almost jumped forward subconsciously. Be careful. His intention was to grab her and not let her fall into the lake. However, he did not expect that because of his nervousness he jumped too hard. With a bang, he knocked Ning Xuema into the water. He could not stand still and fell in with her, creating a big splash. Ning Xuema was speechless. Her face was full of black lines. This person who was trying to save her was too rash. Fortunately, she knew how to swim. Otherwise, she would not have to fill her stomach with lake water. However, it was already autumn and the lake water was quite cold. Ning Xuema did not want to stay in the lake for long. She quickly popped her head out and wanted to swim to the shore. Miss Ning, don't be afraid. I'll save you. Shi Tianlong finally popped his head out and swam towards Ning Xuema. His swimming skills were not bad. Although he was not as good as Ning Xuema, he was quite pleasing to the eye. Should she wait for him to save the damsel in distress? He was a little further away from her. It would take him 2 to 3 minutes to reach her. She still had to soak in the cold lake water for a while longer. However, if she swam to the shore, she would lose her only chance to be close to her idol. This was the first time Ning Xuema was troubled by such a problem. After thinking for a while, she decided to wait for him to save her. Although the water was a little cold, she would take it as a bath for a few more minutes. She deliberately struggled on the surface of the water, her hands scratching wildly. Help, help. She really looked like a drowning person who couldn't swim at all. Seeing her like this, Shi Tianlong swam even faster. As the sound of water gradually approached, Ning Xuema finally saw her idol's face. She pretended to accidentally reach out to grab his hand. She had finally touched her idol's hand. Just as she had imagined, his palm was strong and firm, with rough calluses on his palm. Unfortunately, it was not the familiar calluses of a spear. She only wanted to get close to her idol, but she had forgotten the rules of saving people in the water. The biggest taboo for rescuers was to hold the hand of someone who had fallen into the water. Otherwise, 9 out of 10 people would be dragged into the water. Shi Tianlong clearly understood this principle. Just as Ning Xuema's small hand touched his large hand, he flung it away. Miss Ning, I'm sorry. He slammed his palm towards the back of Ning Xuema's head. It was best to save her if she fainted. Ning Xuema's instinct was to save herself when she was in danger. When she suddenly saw his palm coming towards her, her body reacted faster than her brain. She nimbly dodged to the side and waved her hand, aiming for his vitals. Shi Tianlong's movements in the water were obviously not as good as hers. He did not expect her to counterattack and was stunned for a moment. Ning Xuema's finger was about to hit his carotid artery. Although it was not a fatal spot, if she hit it, Shi Tianlong would be bedridden for a few days even if he did not die. Fortunately, Ning Xuema reacted in time. Damn, she was not trying to kill her idol. Chapter 366. She could not retract her finger in time and could only move her finger to the side and hit Shi Tianlong where it was not vital. But even if it was not vital, it was still very hurtful. Shi Tianlong groaned and his body swayed in the water. His vision turned black and the Ning Xuema in front of him turned into 2. What was worse was that his hands and feet were numb and weak. Not to mention saving people, he could not support himself in the water and slowly sank into the water. Was her ability so high now? She could actually make Shi Tianlong into this state with just a finger. Damn, this was not the effect she wanted. Ning Xuema's face was full of black lines. Now the other party could not be the hero saving the beauty, only the beauty could save the hero. Otherwise this hero would drown in the lake. She swam forward and reached out her hand to catch him. If she wanted to save him, then so be it. At least she could get closer to him. Her fingers had just touched Shi Tianlong's arm and before she could use any strength, she suddenly felt her back turn cold and her waist turn numb. As if she was hit by something, she lost all her strength in a split second. What happened? Ning Xuema was shocked. If 2 people who fell into the water did not have any strength, then it would really be fatal. Before she could do anything else, she suddenly heard the sound of water splashing. Shi Tianlong, who was right in front of her, actually rose into the air from the water, as if he was lifted by someone out of thin air. Ning Xuema watched as Shi Tianlong's body seemed to be pulled by something and flew towards the shore like a whirlwind. She seemed to have realized something and desperately turned her head to look at the shore. Under the moonlight there was a person standing by the shore. His black hair was like a waterfall and his robe fluttered in the wind. Because the distance was too far, Ning Xuema could not see his face clearly. She could not even see the color of his robe. But Ning Xuema immediately recognized that person's identity. Han Shangyue. She did not know why there was an extra enemy. At this moment, his sleeves fluttered and Shi Qianlong's body followed his hand gesture and then fell onto the shore. Luckily, his skin was thick and this fall was like a drizzle to him. It was nothing. He rolled on the shore of the lake and struggled to get up. He hurriedly bowed to Han Shangyue. "Thank you, mister." He had met Han Shangyue before, so he recognized him. Han Shanyue's gaze landed on him and his pupils constricted. His face was hidden in the shadows, so Shi Tianlong couldn't see his expression clearly, but his intuition as a martial artist told him that this mysterious and powerful Mr. Han Shanyue in front of him was filled with killing intent. It caused him to shiver. Although he didn't know where this killing intent came from, he was still very concerned about another matter. He hurriedly bowed to Han Shanyue and said, "Mister, there is still one more person in the lake. Please save her as well." "Someone? Where is it?" Han Shanyue rarely spoke, but his voice was flat. "It's..." Shi Tianlong pointed at the lake and suddenly stopped. The surface of the lake was as flat as a mirror. There was no trace of Ning Xuema. Oh no. She must have sunk to the bottom. Such a deep lake, how could a little girl like her survive if she sank into it? Shi Qianlong's head buzzed. He was originally a hot-blooded and chivalrous man. Moreover, the person who fell into the water was the daughter of Marshal Ning whom he admired the most. He wanted to jump into the water again without saying anything. "She sank to the bottom? I will go and get her out." "Are you sure you can still go into the water?" Han Shanyue's voice was as cold as the moon. Chapter 367. Shi Tianlong shook his head. After being poked by Ning Xuema, his injuries were not light. The blood in his body seemed to have stagnated, and his blood flow was slower than usual. More importantly, his arms and legs were still weak and limp. He knew that it was better to meditate and recover, but, "I'll try my best." Shi Tianlong quickly took off his armor and prepared to save her. "You'll only die if you go down now." Han Shanyue's voice was even colder. His gaze fell on the water. The water was calm, and Han Shanyue's expression was also calm. However, his aura was cold and the surrounding temperature seemed to have dropped by a few degrees. Shi Tianlong could not help but shiver. He felt as if his heart had been frozen into a lump of ice. Ning Xuema was plotted against, and her body was as soft as noodles. She could not help but sink. Although she was a good swimmer, there was nothing she could do in this situation. She could only watch as her nose and mouth sank into the water. The last thing she saw was Han Shanyue's unmoving figure on the shore. The lake was very deep, at least 10 meters deep. Ning Xuema's body sank, and all she could hear was the sound of the water and her own heartbeat. Although her body could not move, she could still hold her breath. She tried her best to hold her breath as long as she could before entering the water. That Han Shanyue was a pervert, but he wouldn't really want to kill her, right? She did not have any deep grudges with him. Half a minute passed, 1 minute passed, 2 minutes passed, 3 minutes passed. Ning Xuema was trapped at the bottom of the water. She began to feel suffocated. As time passed, she breathed out the breath she had taken and there was not much left. Her head started to hurt and her ears were buzzing. She could not hear anything outside and she could not even hear the sound of swimming on the water. What was going on? Even if Han Shanyue did not want to save her, Shi Tianlong should have, right? When she heard him, his body would have gone limp for 1 or 2 minutes. Now he should have recovered more than half of his strength. He should be able to swim over to save her. Why didn't he come? Did that Han Shanyue really want to kill her? Even Shi Tianlong was being controlled. Ning Xuema finally panicked. Her heart was about to jump out of her chest. All right. She still had Kirin. Ning Xuema forced herself to calm down and tried to call out to Kirin telepathically. Little apple, come and save me. I'm underwater." When she was playing by the lake just now, Kirin ran away and said something about going to the kitchen to see if there was anything good to eat, but she didn't come back. She must have stumbled on some delicious food. She suddenly felt a little strange. She couldn't use telepathy to contact Kirin. She couldn't sense Kirin's aura. It was as if someone had severed the connection between her and Kirin. Her summoning spell did not work at all. Kirin did not come. This time Ning Xuema really panicked. The shadow of death loomed over her head, causing her heart to beat like a drum. As he panicked, the blood flow in his body sped up, and his oxygen consumption increased. His mind was in a daze and he panicked. She could no longer hold her breath and choked on a mouthful of water. Drowning people knew that once they choked on water, their nostrils, throat, and chest would burn with pain. Chapter 368. The dizziness in her head intensified, and the veins behind her ears throbbed as if they were about to burst at any moment. After choking on the first mouthful of water, she could no longer control herself and choked on a few more mouthfuls of water. Before she completely fell into darkness, Ning Xuema's heart flashed with sadness. She had braved through so many disasters, but she never thought that she would die in such an inconspicuous lake today. Han Shanhua. She was definitely going to be his enemy. If she survived this disaster, she would definitely take revenge and drown that bastard 800 times. On the shore, Han Shanhua was still standing there. Shi Tianlong was sitting beside him with his eyes slightly closed, as if he was meditating. But his eyelids kept twitching. Obviously he was not willing to meditate. But it was as if he was in a nightmare, unable to open his eyes. On the surface of the lake, where Ning Xuema had sunk, there were circles of ripples, and there were traces of blood in the center of the ripples. It was obvious that the person who had been drowned had already vomited blood. Han Shanhua looked at the spot, his fingertips moving slightly as if he wanted to do something, but he stopped himself. After a while, there were no more ripples on the surface of the lake. It was obvious that the person under the water had either been choked to death or had fainted, and was completely motionless. He then made his move, gently lifting his sleeve, and a white light entered the water. After a while there was a splash and Ning Xuema's body was pulled out by the white light hanging there. Han Shanhua's fingers moved again, and the white light wrapped around Ning Xuema and flew towards the shore. He raised his arm and hugged her in his arms. Ning Xuema's body was dripping wet, her black hair messily draped over her shoulders and face, and her body was cold without a trace of warmth. Her face was pale with a hint of green, and her originally bright red lips were now like fallen petals, without a trace of blood. She was in a sorry state. The moment Han Shanhua hugged her in his arms froze. She was not breathing. He had used too much force and had drowned her. His arms tightened, and he hugged her even tighter and was about to do something. Not far away there was the sound of messy footsteps followed by a voice calling out, "Mr. Han Shanhua, what are you doing?" The person who had come was Ji Yunhuang, and behind him were a few young nobles. When Ji Yunhuang saw everything clearly, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He could not believe his eyes. Master Han Shanhua, who was cold and noble and did not allow anyone to get close to him, was now half squatting on the ground, hugging a wet young girl in his arms. Under their feet, there was already a small puddle of water. From Ji Yunhuang's angle, he could see half of the girl's pale face. "Xuema." Ji Yunhuang strode over. "Did she fall into the water? How is it now?" Han Shanhua did not turn his head. He merely waved his sleeves and Ji Yunhuang and the rest seemed to be bound by something, unable to take another step forward. Ji Yunhuang was stunned. Naturally, he knew that it was Mr. Han Shanhua's doing. On one hand, he was somewhat shocked by the mysterious martial arts of this gentleman. On the other hand, he hurriedly asked, "Sir, how is she? It would be better for me to find an imperial physician for her." Ning Xuema's situation did not look good, and he was really anxious. "Shut up." Han Shanhua finally spat out 2 words. An invisible pressure burst out from his body, causing the hearts of Ji Yunhuang and the rest who were a few steps away to jump a few times, and they all kept quiet out of fear. Ji Yunhuang did not dare to speak again, and could only look at them in fear. Chapter 369. Then he saw a scene that made him flabbergasted. Master Han Shanhua, who was obsessed with cleanliness and did not want to have any physical contact with anyone, actually lowered his head and kissed the pale and soft lips of the girl in his arms. Ji Yunhuang, everyone. Fortunately, Master Han Shanhua did not stop on her lips for too long, as if he was trying to help her breathe. After a moment, the dying Ning Xuema's body finally trembled. Her fingertips also trembled. Han Shanhua immediately flipped her body over so that she was lying on his lap. He pressed his palm against her back and exerted some force. Ning Xuema groaned in pain and began to vomit water. "All right." Ji Yunhuang finally heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Han Shanhua's back with a complicated expression. He did not expect this master to be so professional in saving people. Ning Xuema's life was saved. Knowing that Ning Xuema was fine, he was slightly relieved. His gaze fell on Shi Tianlong, who was meditating not far away. He recognized this general. He frowned slightly. "Shi Tianlong, what is going on here? Why is he here? And he is shirtless, Shi Qianlong's expression was still a little dazed. He paused for a moment and came forward to greet the crown prince. I was patrolling here when I saw Miss Ning playing in the water. I wanted to persuade her to leave, but I did not expect that in a moment of carelessness, I would knock her into the water. I also fell into the water. I wanted to swim over to save Miss Ning, but I did not expect that my hands and feet would suddenly cramp in the water. I was unable to save Miss Ning and almost drowned. Fortunately, Master Han saved me. He paused again. Perhaps it was because his brain was flooded with water that he was somewhat confused. After that, this master saved Miss Ning? He felt that there was something missing, but he could not recall what it was. However, his words were connected and there were no flaws. Everyone present believed him. Shi Tianlong was an upright and hot-blooded person. Ji Yunhuang knew his character very well and nodded slightly. The youths behind him looked at each other and one of them blurted out, "This Miss Ning is really a jinx." General Shi only interacted with her for a short while, and he almost drowned because of her. Before he could finish his sentence, he was silenced by Ji Yunhuang's cold glare. He knew that he had made a slip of the tongue, so he forced a smile and took a step back. He saluted, "Your Highness, this subject has some urgent matters to attend to, so I will leave first." He took his leave. The others also found excuses and left one after another. At this moment, Shi Qianlong's body was dripping wet and his upper body was naked. He was wearing a pair of baggy pants that were sticking to his body. He looked rather pathetic. It was indecent for him to be here, so the crown prince waved his hand and dismissed Shi Tianlong. Ning Xuema's consciousness was forcefully pulled out of the darkness. When she regained her consciousness, she felt as if 1,000 bees had drilled into her brain. Not only was the buzzing unbearable, but it was also painful as if she was being pricked by needles. Her throat and nose were burning, and there was not a single joint in her body that did not hurt. It was as if she had been beaten up. She felt extremely uncomfortable and her body could not help but move. A hand pressed down on her back. "Don't move." The voice was magnetic and cold like a spring. This voice, Ning Xuema suddenly opened her eyes wide. In front of her was a face that was as handsome as a painting. Chapter 370. Ning Xuema's eyes suddenly widened. In front of her was a face as handsome as a painting. Deep blue eyes like the ocean waves, a tall nose, perfectly shaped lips, and long hair that was as black as ink. His appearance could only be described with one word: perfect. She finally saw his face clearly. But at the same time she recognized his identity, Han Shanyue. Everything that happened before she was drowned flashed through her mind like lightning. The shock when she was plotted against, the anger when she was forced to sink to the bottom of the water, the despair when she was about to die, all kinds of emotions awakened in her mind, and directly gathered into a strong anger that rushed into her chest. The most taboo thing for secret agents was anger, because anger could easily make people impulsive and do things that they would regret for the rest of their lives. Ning Xuema often felt that she had already cultivated her anger to the point that she almost forgot what it was like to be angry. But now she finally tasted what it was like to be angry. Hot blood rushed to her head and she suddenly sneered. She suddenly raised her hand and fiercely slapped the person who was hugging her. "Bastard! Go die." Her angry slap was halfway through when her wrist was grabbed by someone. Han Shanyue lowered his eyes to look at her small face, and his eyes met her pair of eyes that were filled with anger. He was slightly stunned. Her originally pale face was flushed red, and her pair of eyes seemed to be ignited by flames, burning with hatred. "Han Shanyue, what kind of enmity do you have with me that you have to treat me like this?" Her throat was still a little hoarse from choking on the water, and these words came out one by one. She was obviously extremely angry. Han Shanyue's body slightly stiffened. Before he could say anything, Ji Yunhuang hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "Xuema, don't misunderstand. You fell into the water and it was this Master Han who saved you? He would save her? It would be good if he didn't cheat her. This time, if it wasn't for him, would she have almost drowned? This person was simply a scoundrel." Ning Xuema was so angry that her whole body was trembling. At this time she only wanted to explode, and all her rationality had disappeared without a trace. Han Shanyue's hand was still holding her wrist, and she suddenly flung it away in disgust. "Take your dirty hand away." "Disgusting." Han Shanyue paused again. His hand was actually flung away by her. Ning Xuema rolled out of his arms and onto the ground. Then she jumped up again. Han Shanyue slowly stood up. Han Shanyue, I don't care why you're plotting against me, but this is a grudge between us. If you have the ability, then kill me now. Otherwise, I will definitely take my revenge for today." Ning Xuema clenched her fists tightly. If she had a knife in her hand right now, she would have slashed with all her might. Ji Yunhuang also noticed that Ning Xuema's mood was not normal. Xuema, calm down. Why don't you change your clothes? She can go home. Han Shanyue finally opened his mouth. His voice was still calm. She doesn't need to stay here any longer. Ning Xuema had wanted to leave as well, but when she heard what he said, she was furious. Trying to chase her away? No way. Who does he think he is? She shook her wet and messy hair and walked in front of Ji Yunhuang. Your Highness, bring me to freshen up and change my clothes. Han Shanyue was speechless. Ji Yunhuang looked at Han Shanyue, who had an unfathomable expression, and then looked at Ning Xuema. He readily agreed, okay, this prince will bring you there. Ning Xuema had almost drowned. Although she had recovered, whether it was her head or her body, it was extremely sore. After walking a few steps behind Ji Yunhuang, she tripped on a small protruding rock and staggered a few steps. Chapter 371. Ji Yunhuang subconsciously supported her, his voice full of concern. Xuema, are you all right? Her small hands were still cold. Ning Xuema straightened her body and shook her head. I'm fine. Ji Yunhuang sighed. Occasionally he would lower his head and suddenly look at Ning Xuema's feet. Why are you? One of her feet was wearing a pair of socks, while the other was bare. Her small white foot stepped on the ground. Ning Xuema finally realized that one of her feet was still bare. When she was playing with Shi Tianlong earlier, she had only worn one shoe and had not had the time to wear the other one. She turned around and looked at the place where she had placed her shoe and sock. It was empty. She must have brought her shoe and sock down with her when she fell into the water. Because this place was relatively remote, there was only a small path that was overgrown with weeds and gravel. When she stepped on it barefoot, she felt a little uncomfortable. She frowned slightly. Ji Yunhuang said, how about I carry you there? Ning Xuema subconsciously took a step back. She was puzzled. Where did Kirin go to play? Why isn't he back yet? Speak of the devil. Not far away, a blue shadow flashed. Kirin came out of nowhere like a gust of wind. Master. Master. Suddenly, it saw Ning Xuema's miserable appearance and was shocked. Master, you fell into the water? I suddenly felt very uncomfortable just now, as if I was going to die. I wanted to sense you, but no matter what, I couldn't sense you. I had no choice but to rush back. Master, are you all right? Kirin spoke like a machine gun, rattling off a bunch of words. Ning Xuema's head was still hurting, but it hurt even more after Kirin spoke. She waved her hand. I'm fine. Just now I was schemed against by a pervert. I'm fine now. Come, change back to your original form and carry me. My feet hurt. Kirin looked at her bare feet. There were a few bloodstains on her soft, crystal-like feet. It looked like she had scratched the face of a beauty. It made his heart ache. Kirin rolled on the ground and indeed returned to its original form. Ning Xuema flew up, and the two humans and one beast left side by side. Kirin's curious voice was still floating in the air. Master, which pervert is scheming against you? Tell me and Little Apple will avenge you. Don't mention it. I'll take revenge myself. Ning Xuema's voice was hoarse and cold. Although Ji Yunhuang did not know exactly what had happened, hearing Ning Xuema's tone, he understood that there must be some inside story that he did not know about. He could not help but look back at Han Shanyue. The master was still standing there. The darkness of the night blurred his face, making it impossible to see his expression. It only made people feel that he seemed a little lonely. Ji Yunhuang's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly thought of the scene where the master did not hesitate to give Ning Xuema a mouth-to-mouth kiss. His heart suddenly sank. What happened between Xuema and the master? The master also seemed to treat Ning Xuema differently. Ji Yunhuang brought Ning Xuema to a warm room. The maids here had already been instructed to prepare bathing water, ginger soup, and clean clothes. Everything was well prepared. Ji Yunhuang was still worried about her and wanted to wait outside for her to change before going out together. However, the eunuch outside sent a message saying that the emperor had arrived and asked him to quickly go and welcome him. The emperor's order could not be disobeyed. He could only give the maids a few instructions before following the eunuch. Ning Xuema soaked in the hot bath for a while and finally warmed up her body. She drank a bowl of ginger soup to get rid of the cold. Her body felt more comfortable and her strength recovered a lot. Chapter 372. The dress that Ji Yunhuang had prepared for her was of good quality. Although it wasn't the style that she liked to wear, it was very fitting. After putting it on and looking at herself in the mirror, she had a different kind of aura. She was quite satisfied with it. The two maids that Ning Xuema had let out to play by themselves had finally found their way here. One of them was an expert at combing hair. Ning Xuema's hair had been taken care of by her for the past few days. Now, she had combed her hair according to Ning Xuema's current style of dress. She combed her hair into a flowing cloud bun, then smoothed her face and applied some light rouge and face powder to cover her slightly pale face. Ning Xuema looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were watery, her lips were like flower buds, and there wasn't a trace of fatigue on her face. She looked delicate and beautiful. She was finally satisfied. Under the guidance of the maid, she walked out of the warm room and towards Wuxia Palace Hall. That was where the garden party was going to be held. Now, most of the people had already arrived. Wuxia Palace Hall was built in the middle of a body of water. It was a two-story hall that was connected to the shore by a winding corridor. When Ning Xuema walked down the winding corridor, she saw that the inside was brightly lit and the shadows of people were flickering. It was a contrast to the rippling blue water downstairs, giving people the feeling of a heavenly pavilion. A little eunuch led her inside. When she reached the entrance, the little eunuch shouted in a sharp voice, "Marquis Jingyuan, young Miss Ning has arrived." The originally noisy hall suddenly became quiet. When Ning Xuema walked in, the people who were chatting at the entrance seemed to have been blown away by a gust of wind. One after another, they retreated to the sides faster than avoiding the plague. Ning Xuema was speechless. Originally, she had lived a peaceful life for more than a month. She had attended several gatherings, but she didn't bring misfortune to anyone. People were no longer afraid of her, the heavenly calamity star. Why was it that when she fell into the water once, these people were avoiding her like a flood? Who said anything about her? Her doubts were picked up by the blue cat, Kirin, who was lying on her shoulder. It tilted its ears and listened carefully, then reported to Ning Xuema through telepathy, "Master, they said that General Shi had only said a few words to you, but he was so tired that he fell into the water and almost drowned. If it wasn't for Master Han Shanyue's timely intervention, General Shi's life would have been over. They said that the reputation of the heavenly cursed Lone Star is not in vain." Ning Xuema, she could feel countless gazes landing on her. Those gazes were filled with complicated emotions. There was fear, schadenfreude, disgust. She could hear the low buzzing sounds of conversations. Because there were too many people, Ning Xuema couldn't clearly hear what they were saying. However, she didn't need to guess to know that it wasn't anything good. It was nothing more than adding oil and vinegar to the fire, talking about her jinxed deeds. At this moment she felt like she was a monkey in a cage in a zoo. She was being watched by everyone as a joke. Ning Xuema had always been magnanimous and didn't really care about those rumors. However, at this moment she felt very uncomfortable. She had worked so hard for so long. She had only been in the limelight for a few days, but now she was kicked back into the mud with just one sentence. And this time, the main culprit who caused her to fall into such a state was the person sitting at the head of the table. At this moment, Han Shanyue was sitting at the head of the table. He had a table to himself. On his left and right, Lihin Ti and the Crown Prince were accompanying him. Chapter 373. Although this Han Shanyue's ability was strange, he was still a commoner, right? Why should the Emperor and the Crown Prince sit beside him? Lihin Ti naturally did not want to leave her out. He smiled and nodded at her. "Xuema, I heard that you fell into the water. Are you okay?" Ning Xuema bowed. "Thank you for your concern. Xuema is fine." "And then go sit down first." Lihin Ti's voice was gentle. In the main hall, other than the Emperor, the Crown Prince, and the swindler Master Han Shanyue sitting at a single table, everyone else sat at a table with 3 people. The seating arrangement was quite subtle, with 2 men and 1 woman. It seemed that the customs of Chong Kong country were not very feudal. No one felt that this arrangement was inappropriate. This time's garden party was originally a disguised blind date event. Those who were interested in each other or those who were interested in each other sat together. Young men and young women, it looked very harmonious. This time, the girls who came to participate in the garden party were naturally not all exceptional beauties. There was no lack of ordinary looks, but with exquisite makeup, it was acceptable. Because there were more men than women, and the status of the girls was not low, even the most ordinary girl had 2 men accompanying her. Although the men accompanying her didn't look very good, they were still nobles after all. They were well-educated, witty in conversation and confident in their actions. They were very gentlemanly. They served food to the girl beside them, chatting and laughing, which greatly satisfied the girl's vanity. Today, every single unmarried girl was like a princess. reservedly enjoying the attentions of the men on both sides. A little eunuch had already brought her to a table, where two youths were already sitting. Their faces were handsome and their clothes were flirtatious. Looking at their attire, they should be from a large family, and their status should not be low. These two people's manners were refined, and their actions had a kind of romantic attitude. Among the youths present, these two should be the best. There was no reason for these kinds of people not to be favored by the girls, but now they were sitting there alone. There were only two reasons. First, these two people's standards were high, and none of the girls present could enter their eyes. Secondly, this was Lu Hin Ti's deliberate arrangement. In other words, Lu Hin Ti wanted her to choose one of the two as her husband. When Ning Xuema walked up to the table and saw the expressions of the two youths, she was even more certain that the second point played a large role. When the two handsome youths saw her coming over, they didn't avoid her like the plague like the other youths. Instead, they stood up and cupped their hands in greeting. While they spoke courteously, their eyes flashed with fear and helplessness as they threw caution to the wind. It was obvious that Lu Hin Ti had pressured these two in advance, which was why they were behaving this way. Ning Xuema was good at reading people's expressions. Normally, the more they were afraid of her, the more she wanted to tease them and vent her anger. But now she was not interested. She sat in the middle of the table according to the rules. Kirin jumped down from her shoulder and nestled in her arms. It rested its front paws on the table, waiting for the meal to be served. She actually brought a pet to the banquet. The two youths were already very reluctant to sit with her, and now that they saw the blue cat, their mood became even worse. One of them had a slightly bigger temper, and seeing this he frowned and said, "Miss Ning, this is a royal banquet. It is improper to bring a pet to the banquet." Although these two people were sitting at the same table as her, they moved as far away as they could, leaving a large empty seat for her, making her table the center of attention again. Chapter 374. Ning Xuema did not expect the two of them to treat her well, but they were clearly trying to embarrass her, which made her even more unhappy. Hearing the words of the man on the left, she sneered in her heart, but did not show it on her face. She said indifferently, "Since this is a royal banquet, His Majesty naturally has the final say. His Majesty has not said anything yet, so who are you to say these words?" The man on the left was the son of the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rights. He was choked by Ning Xuema's words. Ning Xuema did not bother with him anymore. She pulled a plate and gave the blue cat in her arms many of its favorite dishes. However, she was vaguely irritated. She knew that she would be treated coldly at the banquet. She must have lost her mind. She did not take the opportunity to go back, but instead came here to put herself in such an awkward situation. What pet? This god is a Kirin. Kirin could not take it anymore and reprimanded them. A blue cat suddenly opened its mouth and spoke, startling the two young masters. Both of their eyes stared at the blue cat. "Qilin?" Kirin held its head high. "That is this god. You have eyes but can't see. How dare you treat this god as a pet?" The two men were scolded by it, but they were not angry. If it was really a Kirin sitting with them, it would not be a disgrace but a kind of glory. However, they still did not believe it. If it was a Kirin, how could it look like a blue cat? The assistant minister's son asked. Kirin held its head high. "This god can change into anything. Naturally, I can change into whatever I want. If this god reverts to its original form, will there be a place for you here?" Lu Hin Ti's eyes flashed. "Kirin, since it is so lively today, why don't you revert to your original form and let them see? It will also shock them." The little Qilin was somewhat dissatisfied with its master's cold treatment and wanted to help its master win back some face. It humphed and didn't decline. It walked to the center of the hall and a blue light flashed on its body. The blue cat disappeared and what appeared in its place was a half-horse-sized Qilin mythological beast. Sparkling and translucent jade-like scales, green jade-like horns, large double-eyelid eyes, swaying its head and wagging its tail, it looked both spirited and mighty. Little Qilin rarely showed its original form in the city, so the majority of the people present had never seen its original appearance. At this moment, it was their first time seeing it, so each and every one of them widened their eyes. Little Qilin deliberately walked around the hall with its head held high, causing everyone to gasp. Countless envious gazes landed on Kirin. Of course, there were also jealous gazes that landed on Ning Xuema. He was clearly a piece of trash and a jinx, yet he was so lucky to be able to tame such a mysterious and powerful Qilin beast as his pet. He was truly lucky. Of course, most of these jealous gazes were from women. Ning Xuema's appearance was prettier than all the women present. If it wasn't for the fact that she was known as a jinx, all the young men present would probably be attracted to her. People were easily jealous, especially those of the same sex. Thus, these women were inexplicably unhappy when they saw Ning Xuema. They were secretly delighted when they saw her being treated coldly by everyone at the banquet. Now, because of Kirin, the young men present looked at Ning Xuema subtly and didn't reject her as much. Kirin, you said you can change into anything. What else can you change into? Lihin Ti was in high spirits today. Chapter 375. Everything can change. Kirin was proud of itself. In order to show off its abilities, it turned into a fierce tiger with a bang and let out a long roar, scaring everyone present. Especially those young girls, their faces turned pale and they subconsciously hid behind the young men beside them. The people of Chongkong country loved martial arts, and almost all the young men present knew martial arts. Even those young girls knew some flowery moves, but this did not stop them from being frightened when they saw a fierce beast. Those young men were also happy to play the role of flower protectors, protecting the young girls behind them, looking like heroes. The two young men sitting with Ning Xuema also subconsciously looked at Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema was sitting there leisurely drinking wine. There was no trace of fear on her face. The two young men were stunned for a moment, and they couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. They could only look at Kirin. Kirin became excited, turning into a tiger, a magical leopard, and a long python. All of them were majestic magical beasts. It caused a burst of screams and applause from the crowd. Lihin Ti also felt that he had gained a lot of face and he couldn't help but ask Kirin, "Kirin, can you transform into a human?" This question stepped on Kirin's sore spot. Its body slightly stiffened, and with a flash of blue light, it turned back into a blue cat. This god disdains to transform into a human. It walked back to Ning Xuema's arms with cat steps. After going through the little Chilin's catwalk, the attitude of the two youths sitting with Ning Xuema finally warmed up a bit. His body leaned slightly toward the center. The son of the assistant minister looked at Ning Xuema with a complicated gaze. This young lady was really beautiful. And it was a natural beauty, not something that was made up by makeup. Her big eyes were like ripples, her nose was straight, and her small lips were perfectly shaped. The corners of her lips were slightly upturned, like beautiful water chestnuts. Beside her was the only Qilin beast in the whole continent. "Miss Ning, if you have time, you can come to my humble residence as a guest. I will definitely do my best as a host and make you feel at home." The assistant minister's son's words had a hidden meaning. Oh. Ning Xuema turned the white jade wine cup in her hand and raised her eyebrows slightly, as if she didn't quite understand his secret words. The assistant minister's son decided to speak more clearly. Of course, he lowered his voice and said, "Miss Ning, you also know that with your current reputation, it will be difficult for you to marry a talented man. This young master can't bear to see you like this. If you're willing to raise Kirin under the name of the assistant minister's residence, this young master can consider taking you in. Considering your reputation, it's not very likely that you'll be the main wife, but this young master can make you the head of the concubines. You can be considered to have found a good home. If General Ning knows this in the underworld, he should be able to rest assured." He looked as if he was doing her a favor for her sake, as if he was sacrificing himself for the sake of the assistant minister manner. When Kirin heard this, it immediately wanted to explode. Ning Xuema rubbed its head, indicating that it should calm down. Tilting her head, she looked at the assistant minister's son and smiled. "The head of the concubines, a good home. Young master, are you saying this for Xuema's sake?" Her voice was neither loud nor soft, just enough for everyone in the hall to hear. Everyone's ears perked up. Ning Xuema's table once again became the focus of everyone's attention. Lihin Ti frowned slightly. Ji Yunhuang couldn't help but angrily say, "Young Master Zhao, what are you saying? Xuema is a dragon among men. She deserves the best man to treat her with the best treatment. You're insulting her by saying this." Chapter 376. Young Master Zhao froze for a moment and couldn't help but mumble, "A dragon among men? Everyone says that she is a 1,000-year lone phoenix, a jinx. Whoever marries her will be unlucky. She is also trash with a bad reputation. For someone like her to be accepted as a concubine is already good enough. If not for..." He then stole a glance at Luxian Emperor and continued, "If it weren't for your majesty's benevolence, who pitied her and wanted to find a husband for her, who would want to marry her?" Clap, clap, clap. Ning Xuema lightly clapped her hands 3 times. The sound of her clapping could be heard by everyone. "So, you giving me the position of a concubine is a favor to me?" Ning Xuema smiled, her hand still twirling the cup of wine. Since he had already spoken, young Master Zhao raised his head. That's right. It's my good intentions. But I don't like weaklings. The wine cup in Ning Xuema's hand suddenly spun and flew towards young Master Zhao's head. The wine in the cup poured onto young Master Zhao's head. Young Master Zhao's martial arts were not bad. His telekinesis had already reached level 5. Among the youths present, his martial arts were considered the best. But he did not expect that he would not be able to avoid Ning Xuema's cup of wine. With his head full of wine, he could not help but jump up and stare at Ning Xuema. You trash. Who are you calling a weakling? Before he could finish his sentence, his collar was grabbed by someone. Before he could react, his body was lifted up and flew out like a cloud. Not knowing if it was intentional or not, Ning Xuema's round was aimed at Han Shanyue's position. Han Shanyue saw a human weapon flying towards him. His eyelashes drooped slightly, but he did not have any other reaction. When young Master Zhao was 3 feet away from Han Shanyue, he seemed to have bumped into an invisible barrier. He then slid down and rolled on the ground, lying there, unable to get up for a while. This turn of events was completely out of everyone's expectations. Everyone stood there like wooden chickens as they looked at young Master Zhao who was sprawled on the ground. Then they looked at the smiling Ning Xuema who was standing there. They couldn't help but shudder. The other young master sitting at the same table as Ning Xuema was so scared that he shivered. He sat there stiffly. He wanted to run away but he didn't dare to. If he didn't run away he was afraid. He was still holding a wine cup in his hand. He didn't even feel the wine spilling on his hand. Ning Xuema clapped her hands and looked down at young Master Zhao. She mocked, I heard that young Master Zhao is also a genius. How does it feel to be thrown out by a piece of trash? Young Master Zhao's whole body was in pain as if it was falling apart. He had clearly crashed into a rather smooth barrier, but it felt as if he had crashed into a hard rock. The impact made him feel dizzy and all the joints in his body hurt. He wanted to jump up but his limbs were sore. Just as he was about to jump up, his legs gave way and he fell to the ground. He made a fool of himself again. His hair was messy, his clothes were torn and his shoes fell off. Young Master Zhao grew up in a pot of honey. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? He was embarrassed, angry and shocked. He wanted to find a hole to hide in. There was no hole in the hall for him to hide in. He raised his head, his handsome face flushed red. He stared at Ning Xuema. What kind of trick did you use? Ning Xuema tilted her head and looked at him coldly. Trick? Do I need a trick to deal with someone as weak as you? Chapter 377. Young Master Zhao's face was so red that it almost turned purple. Young Master Zhao was regarded as a genius in the capital. Usually he would practice martial arts with his servants, and even a dozen people wouldn't be able to get close to him. Now he was actually thrown out like trash by a legendary trash. If this were to spread out, where would his face go? But how did he get thrown out? He didn't even see how Ning Xuema did it. Most of the people present had the same surprise. They looked at Ning Xuema with eyes full of doubt and shock. Alright, Zhao Xian, you still underestimate Ning Xuema. She is young and hot-headed, that's why she played such a joke on you. Come, help young Master Zhao to change his clothes. Today Lihin Ti, who was in a good mood, tried to smooth things over. There were already servants coming over to help young Master Zhao down. A small disturbance passed just like that. After young Master Zhao went down to tidy his clothes and wash up, he didn't want to return to the banquet that made him lose face. But since the emperor was still there as a subject, he didn't dare to leave the banquet. He could only take his time to return. After greeting Lihin Ti and the crown prince, he didn't want to return to his original seat no matter what. Coincidentally, a young master went out to relieve himself, so he sat down on his seat. Lihin Ti tacitly agreed. Anyway, after such a thing happened, Ning Xuema and this young Master Zhao were no longer possible. It was better to give the opportunity to other youths. When the young master who went out to relieve himself came back, he found a very serious problem. His seat was occupied. And the only seat left was beside Ning Xuema. He shivered in his heart and was thinking about what to do. Lihin Ti spoke, Hua Qingho, you can sit beside Xuema. Hua Qingho was the son of the assistant minister of the Ministry of War. He was tall and sturdy with a dignified appearance. His father was loyal to the royal family and was one of the candidates that Lihin Ti wanted to choose for Ning Xuema. After all, he was the son of a military general. His personality was more straightforward and he didn't beat around the bush. He was a little dazed. Therefore, after being stunned for a moment, he said, Your Majesty, I dare not sit with Marquis Ning. Why? Lu Hinti raised an eyebrow. Facts have proven that Shuema is not a good for nothing. Her kung fu is pretty good. She and you can even compare notes on kung fu. This young general doesn't like women who are too tough. I'm afraid that I'll be beaten up by her. Hua Qingho was a straightforward person. He directly expressed his concerns. Lu Hinti, everyone burst into laughter and turned to look at Ning Shuema. Their eyes were filled with schadenfreude, ridicule, and a little sympathy. Ning Shuema's fingers that were holding the wine cup tightened. This bunch of stinky men. If your psychokinesis is not good, they will mock you for being a good for nothing. If your kung fu is good, they will despise you for being better than them. The young man who was barely sitting next to her had been observing her expression with trepidation. At this moment, when he saw her pretty face darken, he panicked even more. The hand that was holding the chopsticks trembled slightly. He was trembling so much that the plate in front of him was rattling. Ning Shuema was not in a good mood. She looked at him from the corner of her eyes. Why are you trembling? Are you afraid that I'll throw you out too? The young man's surname was Mo. When Ning Shuema asked, he was so frightened that the chopsticks in his hand fell onto the plate. He suddenly got up and left his seat. He bowed to Lu Hinti. Your Majesty, no, I also request to change my seat. Chapter 378. Lu Hinti was speechless. This was too embarrassing. These sons of officials were used to sensual pleasures and had not experienced much of the world. Now that they were frightened by a girl, it was too embarrassing. Ning Shuema said calmly, How can a phoenix sit with a bird? Your Majesty, I don't want to sit with such a good for nothing. Lu Hinti did not want an awkward silence, so he sent someone to arrange another table for young Master Mo and young Master Hua to sit. In this round, Ning Shuema seemed to have the upper hand. However, all the young ladies in the hall were accompanied by young masters. She was the only one who sat there alone. Everyone in the hall glanced at her from time to time. Some were sympathetic, some were mocking, and some were gloating. Ning Shuema sighed. She had no intention of choosing a son-in-law here. However, being isolated like this still made her feel a little lost. In her previous life, she was always in a good position. The number of people who chased after her could surround the entire city. She even had many international friends. It could be said that the peach blossoms were extremely lush. However, after coming here, she did not expect to end up like this. She was shunned like a monster. No matter how she thought about it, it was all because of Han Shanyue. If this bastard did not say that she was destined to be alone, her life would not be so difficult. She glared at Han Shanyue's direction. She wanted to cut him into 1,000 pieces. Han Shanyue sat there lazily. His wide sleeves dragged behind him. The hall was brightly lit by candles, but it could not illuminate the master's true appearance. It looked blurry. He must have used some spell to hide his appearance, right? It made it impossible to see his expression clearly. Even if she could see it clearly before, now that she thought about it, it was all a blur. She could not remember it clearly. How strong was this person's martial arts? It would be very difficult for her to find him for revenge. Actually, it wasn't just Ning Shuema who had this question. Even Lu Hinti, the crown prince, and all the generals present had the same question because they couldn't see through this great master's depth at all. They only felt that this master's every move carried an inexplicable pressure, as if he was a natural-born saint. No one dared to slight him. In fact, most people's nobility was cultivated later in life. After being influenced by the etiquette of the big families, they could bring out that kind of elegance and nobility with every movement. Master Han Shanyue, on the other hand, was born with a noble aura. Everyone who saw him would have the urge to worship him. It was as if a commoner in the mortal world had seen a god in the sky. He did not do or say anything, but the moment Lu Hinti saw him, he did not dare to slight him and treated him with the most honorable etiquette. She had to be careful when she spoke to him. Now that Ning Shuema had made such a mess at the banquet, he acted as if he didn't see it at all. He sat there lazily playing with a jade wine cup in his hand. His eyelashes were lowered and no one knew what he was thinking. He seemed to have sensed Ning Shuema's gaze and turned his head slightly to look at her. This glance was emotionless, but when he saw the burning hatred in Ning Shuema's eyes, a trace of interest flashed across his eyes. It seemed like he had really offended her too much. Lu Hinti did not give up. He still wanted to arrange 2 more escorts for Ning Shuema. However, whoever his eyes landed on would shrink back. It was obvious that no one was willing to pick up this hot potato. Chapter 379. As for those young ladies, They were looking at Ning Xuema with eyes full of schadenfreude. So what if she had a divine beast? So what if her martial arts were high? She would still not be favored by any man. Sitting there all alone was like a big joke. The atmosphere at the banquet was a little awkward. Lu Hinti was about to say something to resolve the awkwardness when suddenly, a young eunuch rushed in and reported, "Reporting to your majesty, the wise king's heir is here to visit." What? Lu Hinti suddenly stood up. The other officials also stood up and looked at the young eunuch in shock. The young eunuch quickly repeated what he had just said and added, "The wise king's heir is waiting outside the garden." Lu Hinti could only say, "Quickly invite him in." He then turned around and ordered Ji Yunhuang, bring everyone to welcome him in my place." Ji Yunhuang brought everyone out. Ning Xuema also searched for information about the wise king in her mind. In this continent, the emperor was not the most respected person. Other than the emperors of the 5 kingdoms, there were also a few sects and clans that were not under the jurisdiction of the emperor. For example, the Sun Moon sect, the Storm sect, the Limitless sect, etc. Other than these famous sects, there were also a few mysterious clans. Most of them had their own territories and their own laws. These clans were passed down through the bloodline. Every disciple in the clans had decent psychokinesis and there were many experts. They formed their own system and did not pay any attention to the emperor. The only difference between them and the sects was that there were many disciples with different surnames in the sections. These clans, on the other hand, only accepted their own disciples and did not accept disciples with different surnames. However, their power in this continent was not to be underestimated. The hierarchy in the clans was also very strict. Among these clans, the Wise King clan was the leader. The leader of the Wise King clan called himself the Wise King, and the future successor would be conferred the title of heir. The Wise King clan was very low-key and did not participate in the world. Therefore, very few people knew about them. Even the emperors of the various kingdoms had not seen their true faces. However, the forces behind Wisdom King were not to be underestimated. Once they were offended, even the royal family of each country would not be able to escape the fate of being hunted down. At first, Wisdom King was called Hell King. Later on, he changed his name to Wisdom King because he thought it was too dark. Now that the Wise King's crown prince was here, Lihin Ti did not dare to be negligent. The young men and women present all revealed excited and curious expressions. Everyone stretched their necks to look outside the door. Everyone wanted to see what the most mysterious heir of the family looked like. A moment later, the Wise King crown prince walked in with Ji Yunhuang. Ji Yunhuang's expression was somewhat subtle. The moment he entered, he glanced at Ning Xuema. As for Ning Xuema, the moment she saw the true face of the Wise King's heir, she dropped her wine glass and blurted out, "Shijue." The person who came in was Shiju, who had not been seen for a day. He had only changed into an ink-black king robe embroidered with a dark dragon, but his aura had completely changed. Previously, he was wearing the uniform of a guard of the Marquis estate, like a sharp blade hidden in a scabbard. He was also somewhat immature and childish. Now that he was wearing the fitting and luxurious king robe, he was like a luminous pearl that had been wiped clean of dust, emitting a dazzling radiance. He was noble, proud, cold, and had no worldly affairs in his eyes. He was like a king who looked down on the world. There were 4 attendants following behind him. Each of them had sharp gazes and were astute and valiant. It was obvious that they were all experts. Chapter 380. When Shijue entered, he first glanced at Ning Xuema. His thin lips curled up slightly as he expressed his satisfaction at her surprise. At this time, his words and actions were very reserved, and he had the demeanor of a king. When he exchanged greetings with Lihin Ti, he advanced and retreated appropriately. His aura did not lose out at all. Ning Xuema could not help but press between her eyebrows. She had been quite lucky recently. She did not expect that she would be able to save the crown prince by casually saving someone in the Heavenly Book Mountain. What was even stranger was that this crown prince had been her personal bodyguard for dozens of days. Was this child visiting incognito earlier? He was actually willing to lower himself to be a servant in her small temple. Lihin Ti naturally had to entertain this crown prince with great hospitality. He ordered the attendants to set up another table below him. Shijue waved his hand. "Your Majesty, there is no need for such trouble." His gaze swept towards Ning Xuema's direction, and he walked over with large strides. He sat beside Ning Xuema. "This crown prince can sit here." "Lihin Ti," he coughed. "Crown prince, that is the seat of the officials. Your status is honorable, so you should have another seat." "No need, this crown prince does not care so much. Moreover, I have a good relationship with Miss Ning. Sitting here is just nice for us to reminisce about the past. Shijue sat down and did not want to move. Crown Prince Shijue was handsome and had a noble status. Moreover, his bearing was even more extraordinary and was not inferior to Ji Yunhuang. This kind of youth naturally attracted the attention of all the girls in the hall. Countless hearts were sprouting. One of the prettiest girls even stood up, wanting to find a good reason to sit with him. However, she did not expect that he would actually choose to sit beside Ning Xuema. He sat down casually and did not seem to have any intention of standing up. This girl secretly gritted her teeth and sat down again unwillingly. Xuema, I haven't seen you for a day. How have you been? Shijue's gaze fell on Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema replied with a wooden face, Thank you for your concern, Xuema is fine. Lu Hin-ti did not expect that Ning Xuema had interacted with this honorable crown prince before. After listening to their conversation, he could not help but ask, Xuema, you and the crown prince are old acquaintances? Ning Xuema was still expressionless. Reporting to your majesty, Xuema was fortunate enough to get acquainted with the crown prince at Heavenly Book Mountain. The crown prince was probably incognito when he came to Xuema's residence. Xuema didn't know his identity, so I wronged him by making him my personal bodyguard for a few days. Lixian Emperor was speechless. There was such a thing. The spies in Manor did not find the crown prince. Those spies should be sent back to the furnace. Shiju glanced at Ning Xuema and faintly said, Xuema, this prince is not visiting incognito. It's because you saved this prince's life, so this prince is going to your residence to repay your kindness. Ah, then I'm sorry to have wronged the crown prince. Ning Xuema was still expressionless. It's not really a grievance. Shijue stared at her face. Xuema, are you angry? Of course not. You're thinking too much. Ning Xuema denied. Then why aren't you smiling? Shijue refused to let her go. I'm not selling my smile. Ning Xuema complained in her heart. She raised her hand and picked up the wine cup. I was shocked to see the heir. Come, Crown Prince Xuema salutes you. Shijue looked at her and slowly raised his wine cup. Don't be so distant, you can still call me Shijue. Xuema doesn't dare. Why wouldn't you dare? I allow you to call me that. Chapter 381. Shijue was still a 14 or 15-year-old child and held a high position, so he naturally had a stubborn temper. Ning Xuema had a headache and didn't want to argue with him. All right, Your Highness Shijue. Remove Your Highness. Shijue was very stubborn. Ning Xuema gritted her teeth. All right, Shijue. This should be fine, right? Yes, it's fine. Shijue had achieved his goal and was finally satisfied. He drank the cup of wine and put down the cup. He looked at Ning Xuema and said word by word, No matter what my identity is, Xuema, I don't want you to be estranged from me. His sharp and direct gaze made Ning Xuema's scalp tingle. She only wanted to divert his attention, so she nodded. Of course we won't be estranged. I've always treated you as a friend. This damn brat, so he had such a high status. No wonder he was so arrogant. Even when he was her personal bodyguard, he wasn't willing to call her master like the other servants. He called her Miss Ning instead. Now he simply called her Xuema Xuema. However, since this brat had such a high status, why didn't he bring a single bodyguard with him to the Heavenly Book Mountain? Furthermore, he was dressed in such an ordinary warrior's attire. She had actually misjudged him. Strange, his appearance was so similar to number 2. There was no need to ask to know that they were related by blood. Could it be that number 2 was also from the Wise King clan? She heard that other than the direct line of descent, the Wise King clan also had many side branches. Could it be that number 2 was from an inconspicuous side branch? Looking at Shijue's attitude, he didn't know about the existence of number 2 at all. The side branch that number 2 belonged to should be weak and rarely cared about, right? The name was ordinary. Even if it was lost, the direct line of descent wouldn't care. Perhaps they didn't even know about it. Poor number 2. Xuema, what are you thinking about? Shijue picked up a piece of fish for her. After following her for a few days, he already knew her general taste. I'm thinking about number 2. Ning Xuema replied casually. Pa. The fish fell onto Ning Xuema's plate, and the soup splashed out. Fortunately, Kirin reacted quickly. It immediately raised its claws and a water screen appeared in front of it, blocking the soup from spilling onto Ning Xuema's dress. Ning Xuema regained her senses and looked at Prince Shijue, whose face had darkened. Sorry my hand slipped. Shiju said calmly, but he was secretly gritting his teeth. He looked at Ning Xuema with a faint smile. Xuema, can you not think of that person in front of me? His voice was a little cold. If it wasn't for him, how would I know you? Ning Xuema inwardly ridiculed him. She sighed, all right, I was just thinking about it, that's all. Don't talk about him anymore. Speaking of which, why were you alone on Heavenly Book Mountain that day? He's still so down and out. This is not the place to talk. I'll tell you next time. Shijue avoided the topic and whispered to Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema realized that Shijue, who was used to being quiet in front of her, seemed to be a different person. He was much more talkative. There was a faint smile on his usually cold face, and he would occasionally serve her food. Ning Xuema wasn't used to him being like this, but it wasn't convenient for her to say anything in public. What's more, he also relieved her of the awkwardness of sitting alone at the banquet table with no one paying attention to her. He finally made her feel like a princess. Chapter 382. Prince Shijue has come to my country, but I only found out today. I have neglected you and caused you to be wronged. I am very sorry. Lihin Ti began to worm his way into being friends with Shijue. Everyone knew that the wise king family was a family of talismans, and talisman masters were as rare as alchemists on this continent. A top-grade talisman was worth thousands of gold, and there was no market for it. Talisman masters were also talents that every country needed to rope in. Now that the wise king's heir had personally come, he naturally wanted to build a relationship with him. I have not been wronged, your majesty does not need to be so polite. Shijue's voice was faint and cold, and he returned to his cold appearance in front of others. While he was exchanging pleasantries with Lihin Ti, he took a plate that was slightly further away and placed it in front of Ning Xuema. This prawn is not bad. I have tasted it and the taste should be to your liking. Try it. When he said this, his voice was much gentler. Since when did this little brat have such a clear understanding of her tastes? She clearly remembered that when she was eating, she did not let him serve her by her side. Ning Xuema was somewhat embarrassed. This heir Shiju was very attentive towards her. He treated her much better than the other noble young masters who were sitting at the same table as him. Those girls who were secretly looking at her as a joke were now filled with envy and jealousy. Among the young masters present, other than the crown prince and the extremely young Mr. Han Shanyue, who else had a higher status than this prince? Furthermore, this prince was talented and handsome, and his appearance was also one of the best among the people present. Especially that pair of eyes, when he looked at people, it was cold and deep, and it made many girls' hearts flutter. Furthermore, this prince was extremely gentlemanly, and he took care of the girls around him. Ji Yunwang's expression was not very good, and he looked at Ning Xuema's table with a complicated gaze. As the host, he naturally could not show his unhappiness, and he could only interrupt from time to time to divert Shijue's attention from Ning Xuema. Helplessly, he had spoken no less than 20 sentences with Shiju, but Shiju had always replied coldly. He was neither rude nor warm, making Ji Yunhuang feel like he was trying to stick his warm face to Shiju's cold ass. Moreover, even if Shiju was conversing with others, his subordinates were still taking care of Ning Xuema. He peeled prawn shells for her, served her vegetables and placed all her favorite dishes in front of her. He even knew that she only ate slightly spicy food. When he encountered a dish that she liked but had a little too much chili, he would even dip it in the soup for her. It was Ning Xuema's first time being taken care of like this. She couldn't help but feel a little confused. She began to wonder if this heir apparent had been provoked and wanted to provoke someone. Could it be that one of the girls in the hall was his sweetheart? So he used her as a tool to provoke that woman? Before she could finish her thought, a young girl gracefully walked up to her. Other than Ning Xuema, this young girl was the most beautiful girl present. Moreover, her status was also high. She was the daughter of the current prime minister, multi-talented, and a psychokinesis expert. She was known as the head of the 4 beauties in the capital, and her fame was even greater than Ji Yunyao's. She was the target of the nobles in the capital. However, she had always been proud and arrogant, and she did not show any interest in any man. Now she was holding a cup of wine and walking in front of Shiju. Chapter 383. Now she was holding a cup of wine and walking in front of Shiju. Her eyes were watery. Your Highness, Xiangming didn't recognize you a few days ago and offended you. Now Xiangming is here to apologize. Her voice was clear and melodious, like an oriole flying out of a valley. Shiju didn't get up and only glanced at her. He didn't have the intention to raise his cup. Miss Xiangming, you don't have to be so polite. Miss Xiangming simply sat down. Your Highness, if you don't want to drink this cup of wine, it means that you still blame me for that day and haven't forgiven Xiangming. Her voice contained some hidden bitterness. There was indeed a story. Ning Xuema simply held her teacup and watched the show. Your Highness, is there some misunderstanding between you and Miss Xiangming? It's better to resolve it today. Lu Hinti also took the opportunity to smooth things over. Miss Zhao is Prime Minister Zhao's only daughter. She is gentle and virtuous and is a famous talented girl in Chongkong country. I don't know what misunderstanding you had that day. Maybe I can resolve it for you. Young people, it's normal to have some small conflicts. Shi Jue frowned and didn't say anything. Miss Zhao Xiangming had already opened her mouth. Actually, it's Xiangming's fault. Xiangming met Your Highness a month ago when I was playing in the suburbs. At that time, Your Highness was following behind Xiangming's carriage. Xiangming thought that he was a lecher, so I reprimanded him and made him run away. Shi Jue, this little brat, was actually attracted to a girl and followed her? That's right, he had just entered puberty and was ignorant about the opposite sex. It was understandable that he couldn't help but follow her when he met a beautiful girl. All the girls he saw in his family were from the same family and couldn't be attracted. So when he came out and saw a beautiful girl of the opposite sex, it wasn't strange that he was attracted to her. Ning Xuema inwardly analyzed the situation in her heart. The look in her eyes became even more intense. She was watching the show when she suddenly felt all the hairs on her body stand up, as if a pair of cold eyes were looking at her. In this hall, there was no one else who could make her feel this way. Ning Xuema immediately looked towards Han Shangyue, who was seated at the head of the table. She still couldn't see his face clearly, but she could feel that he was quietly sizing her up. She could feel his gaze, but she couldn't feel his emotions. Ning Xuema looked back provocatively. Although this bastard's kung fu was unpredictable, what could he do to her in such a public place? I'm not afraid of him. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Han Shangyue smiled and finally looked away. He picked up the cup of wine in front of him and took a sip. His posture was indescribably carefree and lazy, with a strange rhythm that made Ning Xuema's heart skip a beat. Her instincts told her that he was going to scheme against her again. She averted her gaze, but every cell in her body tensed up. She was slightly distracted and didn't even hear how Shi Jue answered Miss Xiangming. Xuema, what are you thinking about? Where did your mind wander off to? Shi Jue used his chopsticks to knock on the plate in front of her unhappily, pulling her back to reality. Ning Xuema came back to her senses and realized that Miss Xiangming, who was originally seated, had already left dejectedly. Her body was even slightly swaying. It was obvious that she had suffered a heavy blow from Shi Jue. She was only distracted for a moment. How did the situation change so quickly? Ning Xuema looked at Shi Jue in surprise, her pair of watery eyes clearly showing her doubts. Chapter 384. Shi Ju couldn't help but sigh. He knew that she didn't hear him. That day I wasn't following her. She had a type of perfume on her that attracted butterflies to her carriage. This type of perfume is unique to the Wise King family. I didn't know where she got it from and wasn't sure if it was the same type of perfume, so I followed her for a while. I didn't expect her to misunderstand and think that I was a lecher. At that time I was too lazy to argue with her. I also recognized that the perfume was similar to my family's perfume and not the same type, so I left. Even if my taste is bad, it wouldn't be that bad. How could I be charmed by such a woman? Shi Ju explained. So it was such a misunderstanding. Ning Xuema felt that it was a little funny and couldn't help but look up at Miss Xiangming. The truth this time would probably have a big impact on this young lady. After all, the reason why Miss Xiangming was so famous was because of the legendary perfume on her body that could attract butterflies to dance around her. Now it seemed that this perfume wasn't natural but applied later. Her legend had been broken in front of so many people, so it was no wonder that she looked like she had suffered a blow. When she heard Shi Ju's last sentence, she couldn't help but laugh. Your taste is quite high. I don't know what kind of woman can enter your eyes in the future. She was just joking, but she didn't expect Shi Ju to look at her. His eyes darkened. What do you think? Ning Xuema was a little frightened by his gaze and laughed. How would I know? She was about to say something to change the topic, but she didn't expect Shi Ju to smile. You know, Xuema. He called her name softly and firmly, making Ning Xuema's heart jump again. She felt that he had more to say. Sure enough, he paused and continued, I remember there's a saying, if you can't repay a life-saving grace, you should repay it with your body. Ning Xuema shuddered and corrected him. Lord Heir, this sentence is usually said by a woman to a man whom she admires and also has a life-saving grace. It's the same the other way around. Shumai. Before Shijue could finish his confession, he was interrupted by the sound of a cup falling to the ground. Bang! A jade cup fell to the ground and shattered into pieces on the green jade floor. The sound was so loud that everyone was shocked. They all raised their heads to look at the source of the sound. My hand slipped. Han Shanyue's voice was indifferent. His tone was calm. The wine cup in his hand had disappeared. No one felt anything was amiss. Lu Hin-ti immediately ordered a new cup for Han Shanyue. This time it was made of mutton fat jade, which was still a treasure of the palace. Ning Xuema didn't have any other thoughts. She just felt that the sound of the wine cup falling to the ground was a little too loud. That sound seemed to ring in her mind and she couldn't help but shiver. And this chaos also made Shiju lose the best opportunity to confess. He wanted to talk to Ning Xuema again, but Lu Hin-ti suddenly became a chatterbox. He kept asking him all kinds of questions and chatted with him, making him unable to pick up the topic of conversation with Ning Xuema. Although Shiju was talking to the emperor, he always took care of Ning Xuema, who knew how many pairs of eyes were red from anger. A girl couldn't help but suddenly say, "Your Highness, this is your first time here. Have you heard of the calamitous star?" Chapter 385. This sentence was full of malice and was obviously referring to something. Ning Xuemo raised her eyebrows and glanced at the girl. That girl had the most ordinary appearance among all the girls present. Usually, when these noble girls gathered, she was always the one who was ignored. She was already full of dissatisfaction. Later on, when she saw that Ning Xuema was the most unwelcome person here, she actually felt very happy and felt much better. Now that she saw that Ning Xuema actually made a comeback and was favored by the honorable Ming King's heir, this made her feel extremely dissatisfied. In a moment of hot-headedness, she actually jumped out and said such a thing. Ning Xuema's face sank and was about to say something when Shiju, who was usually not good with words, said faintly, "This heir has never believed in these strange things. The heir is still young and perhaps doesn't understand this. The heavenly lone star is a jinx that brings bad luck to her parents, brothers, husband, and everyone close to her." That girl did not give up. "This heir is indeed young and doesn't know so much at your age. Whether or not the heavenly lone star is a jinx, it isn't to be believed. However, an ugly, old, and mischievous girl is a living person. It is unavoidably annoying. Young miss, don't you think so?" Shiju spoke again. These words clearly hit the girl's weak spot. That girl was already 20 years old and was still unmarried because of her ugly appearance. In this era, girls were generally married at the age of 16 or 17. Her age was indeed considered old. In addition to the long-term imbalance in her heart and endocrine imbalance, her face looked 4 or 5 years older than her actual age. She hated it when people asked about her age. Of course, she was even more disgusted when people said the words old and ugly. Shiju's words directly made her exquisitely painted face turn green. Ning Xuema could not help but burst out laughing. She did not expect that Shiju, who was not good with words, would have such a sharp time. It made her see him in a new light. The surrounding people could not help but laugh. That girl simply wanted to find a hole to hide in. She did not dare to fall out with Shiju, so she stomped her feet and ran away while sobbing. The small disturbance seemed to have passed just like that, and the banquet resumed its lively state. Ning Xuema sighed inwardly. She already understood the gist of Shiju's intentions. She could also roughly guess why he had returned to her side with his identity today. He was just eager to prove himself in front of her and wanted to be on equal footing with her. He also wanted to give her some face. However, it was not so easy to remove the heavenly cursed lone star hat that was placed on her head. After all, Shiju was still a half-grown child. He was young and hot-blooded. He didn't care, but that didn't mean that the family behind him wouldn't care. The rules of such a big family were much more than the rules of the imperial palace. He was also the successor of Bright King. How could the family behind him allow him to marry a heavenly calamity star? She looked at the 4 silent guards behind him. When they looked at her, their eyes secretly flashed with vigilance. She reckoned that after this banquet, Shiju would be sent back to the clan by them and not be allowed to see her again. She probably couldn't even be friends with him. This might be the last time they would see each other. Originally, she was glad that she finally had a real and trustworthy bodyguard. Chapter 386. Originally, she was glad that she finally had a real and trustworthy bodyguard. Now, it seemed that it was still an illusion. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel sad and unknowingly drank 8 or 9 cups of wine. After all, she was drowned once today. Although she managed to keep her life, her throat was burning and her head felt like it was filled with paste. Her reaction was much slower than usual. Now that she drank more wine, her dizziness became worse. Today she suddenly had the idea of getting drunk. She felt that the maid beside her was too slow, so she simply grabbed the wine jug and drank by herself. Anyway, today's wine wasn't strong. It was like sugar water, making her want to drink more. "Shuema, don't drink any more." Her wrist was held by Shijua. She turned her head and saw that Shijua's eyebrows were almost twisted into 3 characters. He was looking at her with admiration. "Do you have something on your mind?" "Something on my mind? Where did she have it?" Ning Shuema took back her wrist and said with a smile, "Today is such a happy day. We shouldn't go home without getting drunk. Shijua, you're a man. Do you dare to drink a few cups with me? Your alcohol tolerance can't be worse than mine, right?" What did she mean by he was a man? He was originally a man with an indomitable spirit, okay? Shijua raised his eyebrows. "Okay, I'll drink with you. If you get drunk, I'll carry you home." "Good. If you get drunk, I'll let your bodyguard carry you home." Ning Shuema clapped her hands. Shijua was speechless and stared at her. "I thought you would say that if I get drunk, you'll carry me back to your Marquis Ning residence." Ning Shuema smiled. "That won't do. My temple is small and can't accommodate a god like you." "Shuema." Shijua frowned and called out to her, "Are you trying to distance yourself from me?" "Hehe, of course not. Come, let's drink. To be honest, I've been with you for so long, but I've never seen you drink. Is it really okay for a child like you to drink? I heard that children shouldn't drink alcohol as much as possible. It's harmful to their brain cells." She definitely didn't understand the latter half of her modern words, but he understood the general meaning. He couldn't help but feel speechless. He raised his head and knocked on her head. "What nonsense are you talking about? You're younger than me." Ning Shuema's reaction was a little slow. She didn't dodge his fingers and was hit on the forehead. He didn't know how to control his strength, so he knocked on her head until it hurt a little. She didn't want to lose out, so she raised her hand and knocked back. Shiju was much more clear-headed than her, and he grabbed her wrist again. Her wrist was slender and white, and it felt especially smooth in his hand. Shijua was stunned for a moment. His eyes deepened as he looked at Ning Shuema. He opened his mouth and was about to say something when he suddenly felt a chill on the back of his waist. It was as if something cold had drilled into his body. He was shocked and subconsciously touched his lower back, but he didn't feel anything unusual. He looked back suspiciously and saw 4 guards standing behind him like door gods. With them here, if someone was plotting against him, there was no reason that he couldn't detect it. "What's wrong?" Ning Shuema saw his suspicious expression and asked. "Nothing. Come, let's continue drinking." Shiju didn't finish his sentence when his expression suddenly changed and he hurriedly stood up. "What's wrong now?" Ning Shuema had already raised her wine cup. "I'll go out for a while." Shiju hurriedly went out, his footsteps were very hurried. Ning Shuema didn't mind and drank by herself. After a while, Shiju came back and sat beside her again. Chapter 387. When the two of them were about to drink again, Shiju's expression changed again and he hurried out again. Just like this, in less than an hour, Shiju went back and forth 4 times. Naturally, the guards behind him also went in and out 4 times. Lu Hin-ti asked with concern, "Is there anything wrong with the air?" Shiju's pale face was a little red. "Probably because of the cold wind, my stomach hurts a little, but it's already much better." Just as he finished speaking, his expression changed. He cursed under his breath and hurried out again. It turned out that the air had diarrhea. Everyone present looked at each other. In the end, many people's gazes fell on the half-drunk Ning Shuema. The Heavenly Lone Star was indeed worthy of being called the Heavenly Lone Star. The heir had only sat and drank with her and his stomach was already in pain. After a long while, one of Shiju's guards came in and bowed to Lu Hin-ti. "Your Majesty, the heir is slightly unwell." He asked the subordinate to come and ask for leave. Lu Hin-ti nodded slightly and asked a few questions with concern. The guard answered one by one and thanked him. Finally, he said, "My heir ordered this subordinate to escort Miss Ning back to the residence tonight." He turned around and stood behind Ning Shuema like a door god. Although Ning Shuema drank a little too much, her mind was still clear. She frowned. "No need. You should go and serve your heir. I have guards and maids." Her guards and maids were waiting outside. The guard did not move and stiffly replied, The heir's orders cannot be disobeyed. Alright then, let him be. Ning Xuema no longer paid attention to him and continued to drink. Kirin was someone who wished for the world to be in chaos. It also used its two little paws to hold the wine cup and drink cup after cup. It was more enjoyable than drinking water. When Ning Xuema drank a cup, it could drink 4 cups. By the time Ning Xuema noticed, the blue fur on its body had already turned into blue scales. With a plop, it fell onto her body and fell asleep, snoring softly. Ning Xuema was speechless. She had thought that it was a majestic qilin, so its alcohol tolerance must be heaven-defying. It turned out that it was also a silver candle. Now it had become a cat with scales all over its body. She still had to carry it back to the residence later. Naturally, the imperial banquet wasn't just about drinking wine. The ladies of the noble families all presented their talents. There were people who sang softly, people who danced, people who played the pipa, and people who danced with swords. It was as lively as adding oil to a fire. Ning Xuema watched lazily, pouring wine for herself from time to time. Her surroundings were bustling with noise and excitement, but she felt an unprecedented sense of loneliness amidst all the hustle and bustle. This excitement did not belong to her, and neither did she belong here. Another young lady from a noble family presented a gentle dance. After the dance, there was another round of applause. Ning Xuema's reaction was a little slow. She only clapped when the applause stopped. Lonely. The monotonous sound of clapping was scattered and abrupt. It sounded like a booing. The young lady was immediately angry. She glanced at Ning Xuema and asked, "Marquis Ning, do you think my dance is not good?" Ning Xuema was indeed drunk. She nodded and answered her honestly, It's not bad, but it's not good either. My waist is not soft enough and some of my movements are not on point. My arms and legs are a little stiff." The young lady was speechless. She sneered, "It seems that Marquis Ning is an expert in dancing. It's rare that the emperor allows everyone to gather here. Marquis Ning, why don't you present a dance? Let everyone see." Chapter 388. In fact, everyone in Changkong country knew that Marquis Ning's daughter was not only a good-for-nothing, but also an idiot at dancing. In the past, in order to gain the recognition of others, she had learned dancing from a dance master, but in the end she was not cut out for it. Her arms and legs were as stiff as a robot's. The dance master sent by the palace was so angry that he ran away, saying that she was rotten wood that could not be carved. This incident and Ning Xuema's reputation as a good-for-nothing were talked about by the people in the capital, becoming another joke. Almost everyone present knew that the woman's words were obviously to checkmate Ning Xuema. Unexpectedly, Ning Xuema turned her cup and looked at her. She put down the cup and stood up. "Then I will dance." The idiot at dancing was actually going to dance. Many people who had been drinking until now were a little tipsy. They loudly cheered and applauded her, calling out, "Dance, dance, dance," obviously treating her like a clown. Ji Yunwang's face darkened as he coldly glanced at everyone who was obviously excited. Everyone was swept by his cold gaze and finally woke up. They sat down embarrassedly and did not dare to make a fuss. "Xuema, you are drunk. You don't need to dance." Ji Yunhuang helped Ning Xuema to smooth things over. Seeing her being isolated by everyone, he also felt a little sad, but he also had his own difficulties. Ning Xuema's heart was filled with an inexplicable fire that she wanted to release. She ignored Ji Yunhuang's attempt to smooth things over and only looked at the clothes on her body. She was currently wearing a palace dress. It looked good, but it was a little complicated and seemed to drag on. She raised her head and asked Lihin Ti, "Your Majesty, this humble subject wants to change into another set of clothes." Lihin Ti's eyes flashed slightly, but he was also straightforward, approved. Ning Xuema smiled, "Thank you, Your Majesty." When she bowed, she even staggered a little. When she got up, her eyes inadvertently met with Han Shangyue, who was beside her. He sat there and looked at her indifferently, without any emotions in his eyes. Of course, Ning Xuema could not see his face clearly. Even if there were emotions in his eyes, she could not see them. Therefore, she calmly turned her eyes away and followed a maid down the stairs. There were many singers in the royal gardens, so naturally, there were also many clothes of different colors. After a while, Ning Xuema appeared in front of everyone's expectations, as if they were watching a joke. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw how she was dressed. After more than a month of recuperation, Ning Xuema had not only grown taller, but her figure had also become more exquisite. What should be protruding was protruding and what should be perky was perky. Earlier she was wearing a loose dress, but now she had changed into a tight red dress. Long Sky's culture was relatively open. While the ladies from big families dressed more conservatively, the dancers' clothes were still very eye-catching. And Ning Xuema's outfit was even more eye-catching. Her upper body was a red tube top embroidered with peony flowers, and the outer cover was a bright red translucent shawl. Below, she wore a fiery red short skirt, and a thin translucent shawl of the same color was tied around her waist, fluttering with her movements. A pair of pink long legs were faintly discernible under the shawl. Her feet were bare, and a thin silver chain was tied around her snow-white ankles. There were 2 crystal bells on the silver chain, and they jingled as she walked. Her long hair was like a waterfall, draping over half of her body. There was a circle of flowers on top of her head, and a flower the size of a teacup was in full bloom. Her arms were also bare, and there were also silver bells on her wrists. Her feet seemed to be stepping on some kind of rhythm, so the silver bells on her body rang. Chapter 389. Ding-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling. It was as if she was playing some kind of music. She was born beautiful, and now she had deliberately put on makeup. There was a flame-shaped flower between her eyebrows, which made her eyes look like flowing water. When she turned her head slightly, it was overflowing with light and color, making her look like she was flying. Red clothes, black hair, red clothes, and snow-white skin. She was like a burning flame, but also like a fire who had fallen into the mortal world, whose eyes would light up. Everyone was waiting for her performance as if they were waiting for a joke, but now that they saw her like this, they all held their breaths. The nobles had seen many beautiful women in their lives. Even if they met a fairy, they would still be able to remain calm. It was very rare for a girl to be able to move their hearts with just her looks. But at this moment, Ning Xuema made their hearts sway. They almost couldn't move their eyes away, and they couldn't even care about the girls sitting next to them. Before she even started dancing, she had already shocked everyone. The girls sitting next to them all secretly clenched their fists. The girl who suggested for Ning Xuema to dance was so regretful that her intestines turned green. An Shanyue sat there. Seeing her like this, his fingers slowly clenched in his sleeves. 8 out of 10 people's eyes were focused on her pair of snow-white slender feet. They were like 2 crescent moons, and her toenails were pink and glossy like pearls and jade. In the banquet, there were sounds of men swallowing, and some people had already stood up, forgetting their manners. Lu Hinti's heart also felt as if it had been electrocuted, fiercely beating a few times. He knew that Ning Xuema was beautiful, but he didn't expect her to be beautiful to this extent. Especially when matched with her clothes, her every move was able to hook people's souls away. At this moment he wished he could die for her. She was a stunner. No a fairy. No a witch. Xuema, what dance are you dancing? Lu Hinti felt that his voice was a bit dry. Flying in the sky. Ning Xuema spat out 2 words. Although everyone didn't know what flying in the sky was, for some reason, they felt that this girl's dance would definitely be shocking. Ning Xuema's figure spun around as she started to jump. In her previous life, she was a master of both singing and dancing. Jazz dance, street dance, classical dance, and even pole dance, she had dabbled in them all. When she danced, she was like a dancing fairy, making people intoxicated. And this flying Apsara's dance was something she had comprehended in her dream. At that time she was traveling to Dunhuang and saw the flying Apsara's mural. After she came back she had a dream. In the dream, a young lady in fiery red clothes was dancing gracefully. Bounce back the pipa and sing. When she woke up, she remembered the dance steps but forgot the lyrics of the song. At least she remembered the tune of the pipa. Because of this dream, she excitedly went to learn the pipa for a period of time. Now it had come in handy. The big strings were as noisy as a downpour, while the small strings were like whispers. There was a cacophony of noise as beads of all sizes fell onto a jade plate. In the middle of the valley, the singing of orioles and the bottom of the flower is slippery, and the serene spring flows hard under the ice. This was Bai Ji's pipa performance. At this time, it was quite appropriate to compare Ning Xuema's pipa performance. The song seemed to come from the horizon, making everyone unable to help but be immersed in the music. And the beauty of her dance had made the dancers on the side collectively speechless. Her waist was extremely soft, and every movement of her hands and feet was breathtaking. Even the most picky dancer couldn't find any fault. Her red clothes danced in the hall. Sometimes she bent over and spun, sometimes she floated up. She was like a flower blooming in the spring breeze, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. The silver bells hanging from her body rang rhythmically with the pipa. It was surprisingly harmonious and pleasing to the ears. Chapter 390. Everyone present was dumbfounded. Even Emperor Lixian had lost his self-control and stood up. The others wanted to cheer, but they were afraid of disturbing her dance and her pipa. All of them held their breaths like wooden sculptures. Originally, there were musicians in the hall to accompany the dancers. When Ning Xuema started to dance, those musicians were eager to give it a try. They wanted to play the instruments at hand to match her pipa music. But as soon as it sounded, everyone glared at it. This was the sound of nature. Any music was blasphemous to it. The musicians did not dare to act rashly. They tried their best to memorize the tune so that they could secretly practice it when they returned. Han Shanhua sat there. His gaze was fixed on Ning Xuema. His fingers clenched the jade cup so tightly that his fingertips turned white. Ding ding dong dong. Suddenly the sound of a guqin came from outside the window. After a few notes, it was followed by Ning Xuema's pipa. Everyone was angry at first. They were angry that someone did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. They actually dared to go along with this sound of nature. But before they could say anything, they were attracted by the sound of the guqin. Many of the people present knew music. There were also many people who knew how to play the guqin. A few of them were even masters of the guqin. But when they heard the sudden sound of the guqin, they suddenly had the urge to go home and smash the guqin. Compared to the sound of the guqin they played was like sawing wood. The sound of the pipa and the tinkling of the guqin were surprisingly harmonious. If Ning Xuema's pipa sound was like a wisp of spring breeze, then the guqin sound was like a flower slowly blooming in the spring breeze. The spring breeze blew and the flowers bloomed beautifully. This was the true sound of nature, the true meaning. For a moment, everyone forgot to reprimand the person who played the zither. Each and every one of them was mesmerized by the music and looked at it with infatuation. They felt that this song should only exist in the heavens. How many people could hear it in the human world? They only hoped that this guqin, this pipa, this dance would never stop. As expected, the music continued. Ning Xuema danced as if she didn't know what fatigue was. Her expression was as if she was possessed. But in her heart, she was complaining incessantly. Before the sound of the piano started, she had already danced to the last verse. She only needed to dance for another half a minute and she would be able to end it perfectly. But as soon as the sound of the zither came, her feet seemed to be controlled by someone. Her body made all kinds of complicated dance moves, and the sound of the pipa also began to follow the tune of the zither. Her fingertips wandered around the lute until they began to bleed. However, it was as if she had put on a witch's red dancing shoes. She could not stop at all. The sound of the guqin changed from the warm spring flowers to the sound of armored horses and golden spears. It sounded like a broken silver vase, like endless falling trees. It sounded like the betrayal of a lover on the battlefield, and she turned to the arms of the enemy. It sounded sad, indignant, desolate, and unfair. All sorts of negative emotions rushed at him. Some of the people present began to sob, some beat their chests and stomped their feet, some were seething with anger. Clearly they had been completely controlled by the zither. Furthermore, Ning Xuema's beautiful face was beginning to turn pale, and the blood in her chest was beginning to surge. She wanted to stop but she couldn't. Suddenly a cold wind blew beside her. Her body had already fallen into someone's embrace. Her dance was forced to stop. Following that, a pair of hands stretched out from behind her. The pipa in her bosom was held by those hands. Clang, 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 clang. These three sounds were like thunder rolling across the sky. It immediately disrupted the tune of the guqin. Chapter 391. The sound of the guqin paused and the melody changed again. This time the sound of the pipa did not follow it. Instead, it played a few more notes, like a heavy rain falling from the sky, extinguishing the sadness and resentment created by the guqin in one fell swoop. Ning Xuema's body stiffened as a faint fragrance entered her nose. Her mind, which had almost been controlled by the zither, was pulled back. Ning Xuema's body stiffened as she sobered up. Her mind, which had nearly been controlled by the zither, was pulled back. She was very familiar with this fragrance. Her expression changed and she subconsciously wanted to struggle. You, be good. Han Shanhua's arm tightened, and Ning Xuema's body completely fell into his embrace. He did not know which acupuncture point on her body he had casually pressed, but it actually made her unable to move in an instant. His breath was above her head. His arms were wrapped around her, and his fingers did not stop moving across the pipa. The sound of the pipa flowed out from his fingertips, and the melody was also very pleasant to listen to. The sound of the Guqin outside was interrupted by the sound of his pipa several times, and was slightly scattered. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this Mr. Han Shangyue was fighting with the person playing the Guqin outside? But why did he have to hold her in his arms and play? At this time she was very willing to give the pipa to him. The person playing the Guqin outside was obviously not someone to be trifled with. The melody changed again, and it was as cold as the northern wind whistling in the winter. The northern wind blew the white grass on the ground. The people who were just about to wake up from the music immediately felt as if they had stepped into an ice cellar, and began to shiver. Ning Xuema also slightly shivered and wanted to dance again. Suddenly she felt as if her ears were stuffed with 2 balls of cotton, and the sound of the Guqin outside suddenly became much softer. Be conservative, don't think, don't think, don't think, don't be sad, don't be happy. A voice seemed to ring out in her mind. This was a kind of cultivation chant. Ning Xuema faintly felt that this scene was somewhat familiar, as if she had experienced it before. This was naturally not the time for her to let her imagination run wild. She simply closed her eyes in his embrace and adjusted her breath. She didn't know why, but even though she was clearly annoyed by the person behind her, she was able to quickly enter a meditative state in his embrace and regulate the blood and qi in her body. Han Shangyue held the beauty in his arms, his face still expressionless. However, his hands began to emit a faint white light as he plucked the strings of the pipa. As the sound of the pipa flowed out, it was as if spring had forcibly dispersed the raging cold air, dyeing the frozen ground green inch by inch. The pipa in Ning Xuema's arms was used by the court musicians. Although it was also of high quality, it was still an ordinary instrument. Once Han Shanyue's telekinesis was infused into it, the strings of the normal pipa could not help but vibrate. Pung! The string broke. The sound of the pipa suddenly stopped. The sound of the zither outside took advantage of this gap and immediately became louder. People had just felt the warmth of spring from the sound of the pipa, and now they were brought into the hot summer by the sound of the zither. Everyone felt that the surrounding air was so hot that it was about to burn. Everyone began to sweat profusely. Some people couldn't help but take off their clothes. Some impatient ones even tore off their clothes. Damn it! Han Shanyue's brows furrowed, and his fingers once again pressed on the strings of the pipa. He actually only used the remaining strings to play a beautiful melody. This time, he did not purposely go against the sound of the zither outside. Instead, he played the melody of high mountains and flowing water. The water gurgled, the mountain breeze blew, and white clouds leisurely floated above the peaks. Everyone felt refreshed, and those who were taking off their clothes finally stopped. Chapter 392. Everyone felt as if they were riding on a white cloud, rising higher and higher, higher and higher. If the sound of the guqin wanted to suppress the sound of the pipa, it had to be played at a higher pitch than the sound of the pipa. Hence, the sound of the guqin changed direction, as if it was attached to the sound of the pipa. Everyone felt that the cloud below them was getting higher and higher, almost reaching the clouds. This was not a good feeling. Many people were trembling in fear, desperately lying on the table and hugging the table legs as if this would be safer. Although Ning Xuema's ears were blocked, the sound of the guqin and pipa were played with psychokinesis, directly hitting the deepest part of people's hearts. Hence, the blocking of her ears did not have much effect on her. She also felt as if she was rising high up in the sky. However, she had many experiences of flying high up in the sky, and was even forced to sit on the back of the golden-eyed eagle, which was 100 times more exciting than a roller coaster. Now, this feeling of being in the air was like a drizzle to her, and she did not care about it at all. Everyone else's minds were completely controlled by the sound of the guqin and pipa, but Ning Xuema's mind was clear. She clearly understood that she was still in Han Shanyue's arms, and that person had been hugging her and playing the pipa. Shouldn't this kind of musical battle be focused on nothing? Shouldn't he be concentrating? Shouldn't he be looking for the most suitable and comfortable position to play? Why did he have to pull her into his arms and play? It was so awkward to play the pipa with someone in the middle. Or was there some other reason for him to do this? Did he want to borrow her psychokinesis? But her psychokinesis was only at level 4, how much psychokinesis could she lend to him? Ning Xuema could not figure it out. At this time she could still be distracted. Although Han Shanyue did not look at her, his body was tightly pressed against hers, and he could feel all the breaths in her body. When she was distracted, her breaths were naturally different from when she was exercising. Being distracted meant that her mind was strong enough, and she was not controlled by the music. Han Shanyue ignored her, and his fingers moved faster and faster on the pipa, and the pitch became higher and higher. Finally, the sound of the guqin outside did not dare to go higher. If it went any higher, the strings might break. Unwillingly it stopped. When the sound of the zither stopped, the tune of the pipa also slowed down and finally came to a stop. Everyone also felt that their feet had finally stepped onto solid ground, and their hearts, which had been hanging high in the air, finally settled back into their chests. Zheng. With the sound of a pipa tearing silk, everyone felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. They finally woke up completely from the illusion created by the music. They looked at each other and their faces turned red. They wanted to find a hole to crawl into. These princes, who were usually immaculately dressed and strove for elegance in their every move, were all disheveled at this moment. There were even some who were topless and stripped down to their underwear. Moreover, their postures were all strange. Some were hugging the legs of the table and trembling, some were lying on the ground with their hands on the snow-white carpet, and some were even hiding under the table and trembling with their hands holding their heads and butts sticking out. The women weren't any better. Although they weren't completely naked, their outer garments and necklines were open. Their hair was loose and messy. Some of them were hugging a pillar, while others were hugging the men beside them. This situation was not the usual chaos and awkwardness. Everyone's faces were red as they hurriedly lowered their heads to tidy up their clothes. Those whose clothes were only disheveled were still okay, they just needed to tidy it up a little. There were also people whose clothes were stained with oil, vegetable stains, or torn by themselves. They couldn't wear them anymore and had to change their clothes. Chapter 393. Because Ji Yunhuang and a small group of people had a high level of cultivation, they were able to withstand the sound of the music. Thus they did not fall too deeply into the illusion. At this moment, other than their pale faces and slightly messy clothes, they were fine. When Ji Yunhuang woke up, he immediately looked at Ning Xuema and was startled. Ning Xuema was still in the arms of Master Han Shangyue. Han Shanyue's arms were wrapped around her and his hands were still on the strings of the pipa. The two people's posture was indescribably intimate. Xuema. Ji Yunhuang could not help but call out to her. Master. Kirin, who was drunk and sleeping, finally jumped up and looked at his master in disbelief. Didn't Master hate this Han Shanyue the most? Why did she allow him to hug her? Kirin's voice was exceptionally sharp and attracted the attention of the people who were preparing themselves. They all opened their eyes and mouths wide. Especially the women, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Didn't Master Han Shanyue never get close to any woman? How could it be? How could he hug that jinx so intimately? Furthermore, the title of jinx was bestowed upon her by him. Ning Xuema also came back to her senses and secretly gritted her teeth. Let me go. Her acupuncture point was still sealed. Han Shanyue's eyes dimmed and he decisively let go of her. Ning Xuema staggered for a moment before falling to the ground with a thump. She was forced to dance for such a long time that all the strength in her body was exhausted. When Han Shanyue was hugging her, she did not feel it, but when he let go, she felt that her body was as soft as cotton. That was why she suddenly fell down. She was stunned and could not help but angrily glare at Han Shanyue. Han Shanyue only glanced at her coldly and turned around. Like a wisp of smoke, he flew out of the window. Xuema. Ji Yunhuang wanted to come over and support her. However, he himself also staggered a little. Just now, they had exhausted all of their strength in that musical duel. Huang Lihin Ti groaned from the side. His appearance was also somewhat disheveled. If he had not been concerned about the image of the emperor, he would have already collapsed under the table. Now he was sitting on the ground and had yet to get up. Ji Yunhuang secretly felt ashamed and hurriedly supported his father, helping him to sit properly on the chair. When he turned back to look at Ning Xuema, she had already gotten up on her own, gritted her teeth and pounced toward the window. She wanted to see which bastard was playing such a wicked zither. Ha, little Xuema, your dance was very nice. I'll come and find you again. She heard an ethereal laugh. The voice was a little hoarse and magnetic, very pleasant to the ears. Ning Xuema stopped in her tracks and her expression changed drastically. This voice was so familiar. It's that red-clothed freak's voice. How could this be? Wasn't he already kicked into the lake to feed the beasts? Ning Xuema gritted her teeth and pounced on the window. The pavilion they were in was built on the water. It was originally prepared for summer, so there were many windows in the pavilion. Ning Xuema stood there and could see the panoramic view of the outside. Under the moonlight, the lake surrounding the pavilion was like a mirror. She could not see any strange people coming and going. Even Han Shangyue, who had come out of the window, was nowhere to be seen. The others obviously had the same thoughts as her. After they could move, they all ran to the nearest window to look, but they did not see anything. Did the zither player leave? Monday recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, let's go. Chapter 394. The Royal Garden's security could be said to be the tightest. Who could sneak in so stealthily and almost kill so many people with just one song? If Han Shangyue was not here today and used his pipa to repel the person playing the zither, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lu Hinti's face was gloomy. He immediately ordered his bodyguard to call in the leader of the royal guards who was in charge of security today. A moment later, a fierce general came in with a pale face. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. That person was Shi Tianlong. The moment he came in, he knelt down and begged for forgiveness. Lu Hinti asked him a few questions about the defense and he answered them one by one. There was no problem with his defense and it could be said that there were no blind spots. No one should be able to sneak in. When the zither sounded, Shi Tianlong initially thought that it was the royal family's entertainment program and did not pay much attention to it. When he realized that something was wrong, he and his soldiers were already mesmerized by the sound of the zither. It was only when the two instruments ended that the patrolling guards woke up. When they came over, it was as if they were suffering from a serious illness. They could not even walk properly. Some of the weaker ones had already vomited blood. However, when the zither sounded, Shi Tianlong happened to be patrolling nearby and saw the figure of the person playing the zither. At that time, the person was dressed in red and was sitting on a small boat with a dark blue zither on his lap. At that time, there was a mist on the water, causing the person's figure to be faintly discernible. Other than the black hair and red clothes, Shi Tianlong did not see anything else. Lu Hinti then ordered everyone in the music hall to come over and let Shi Tianlong identify the person. Shi Tianlong looked at them one by one and shook his head with certainty. He is not here. Lu Hinti frowned even more. He then asked the leader of the music hall if there was an outside zither player. The leader was in fear and trepidation, saying that the royal family would definitely not allow an unknown zither player to come in. There were so many people in the royal garden, so many experts, but they did not even see the other person's face clearly and were almost wiped out. Who could this person be? How did he get in? What was his purpose in coming here to play this murderous piece of music? Who was the one who sent them? Would he attack again in the future? Countless questions swirled in everyone's minds, but no one could find an answer. Lu Hinti's face was as dark as iron. Everyone's expression was naturally not good. The person playing the zither was undoubtedly a great danger. It was like a knife hanging over everyone's head, causing everyone's heart to palpitate. People were most afraid of unknown dangers. It's her. It's all her fault. One of the women couldn't help but scream. She pointed a finger at Ning Xuema. It's all her fault. If she hadn't danced that weird dance and played that lousy pipa, she wouldn't have been able to attract that demonic zither sound. This voice seemed to have reminded everyone of something. Everyone's gaze once again gathered on Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema still hadn't changed out of her red dress. Her red dress was like fire, which made the other women jealous. Look, she's wearing red too. It's the same color as that Guqin player. That's right, that's right. This is definitely not a coincidence. That red-clothed Guqin player must have been summoned by her. That's right. Maybe her playing the pipa was a secret signal to attract that demonic red-clothed man. Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence? Nonsense. Kirin jumped up. Monthly ticket, recommendation ticket? Chapter 395. Nonsense. The little Qilin jumped up. There are many people who wear red clothes. My master was forced to play the pipa by you guys. It wasn't like she wanted to play it. How did it become a secret code? You ugly women are all ugly people. You're not as beautiful as my master, so you're jealous and purposely splashing dirty water on her. Despicable. Despicable. Kirin's words were like a cannon that poked a hornet's nest. The other women who were watching the show coldly from the side also became indignant, and their sarcastic remarks became more and more. Look, she even took in a mythological beast. How could it be possible with her ability? Someone must have helped her. Yes. They even signed a blood contract. How could a trash like her sign a blood contract? The person who helped her sign the blood contract must be a heaven-ranked expert. But everyone knows that on this continent, only the ancestor is a heaven-ranked expert. It's impossible for the ancestor to be a heaven-ranked expert because he was in the imperial palace at that time. Then the expert behind this is worth considering. Could it be the one who played the zither in red? A woman's reasoning ability was good, and she immediately analyzed logically. Yes, there must be a demon when things are abnormal. The things happening around her are too abnormal. Your Majesty, there's definitely something wrong with this woman. We must thoroughly investigate. The women spoke one after another, and the spearhead was pointed at Ning Xuema. Lu Hin-ti frowned when he heard these women's chatter, but after listening to them, his heart was moved. There were indeed many strange things happening around Ning Xuema. It was very abnormal. He remained calm and looked at Ning Xuema. Xuema, do you have anything to say? Ning Xuema had already sobered up, but she really drank too much, and the alcohol made her usually astute mind somewhat unclear. She shook her head and asked, Your Majesty, what do you want me to say? Look, she's talking about you and me when she's talking to Your Majesty. How rude. Someone immediately grabbed Ning Xuema's words. Lu Hin-ti frowned and waved his hand to make the woman shut up. He looked at Ning Xuema's red face. Although what they said is just speculation, it's quite reasonable. Xuema, I'm not doubting you, but there are too many mysteries around you. First, tell me how you and the mythological beast Qilin established a blood contract? Who was the person who helped you? I can't remember. Ning Xuema's answer. She really couldn't remember. That part of her memory had always been vague. Luxian Emperor frowned even more. How can you not remember such an important matter? Could it be that you really have something to say? Is it really related to that red person? The little Qilin cried out from the side. Hey Emperor, my master and I really don't remember that matter clearly. My master didn't lie. Lu Hin-ti's face sank and he faintly said, You probably drank too much so your mind isn't clear. It's possible that you can't remember. Then you should stay here to sober up before answering me. Guards. 4 imperial guards came in and bowed, Your Majesty. Bring Marquis Ning to a suitable place to sober up. Lu Hin-ti ordered. Ji Yunwang's complexion slightly changed. He hastily bowed and said, Imperial Father, although the matter of Xuema subduing the little Qilin is somewhat strange, it doesn't mean that the person behind her is that red-clothed zither master. After all, we don't have any real evidence, so if we just punish her like this. Chapter 396. Did I say that I'll punish her? But there's something fishy about her. If we don't find out the truth, the country won't be at peace. That's right, Crown Prince. This woman is too strange. Even if she doesn't have any tricks up her sleeves, she's still a jinx. This disaster might have been caused by her evil aura. This kind of woman not only brings bad luck to her parents, but also to all her relatives. She might even bring disaster to the country. Another woman added fuel to the fire. The 4 guards agreed and immediately came to arrest Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema wanted to laugh. Just based on a few groundless accusations, they wanted to throw her into prison? This old emperor's intelligence was too high. She didn't say anything, but Kirin was already so angry that all its fur stood on end. A blue light flashed on its body and it revealed its original form. It turned into a majestic Kirin beast and stood in front of Ning Xuema. It bared its teeth at the 4 guards. Who dares to arrest my master? Ask if I agree to it first. The guard that Shiju left behind also stood beside Ning Xuema and said coldly, She's someone that my heir wants to protect. I won't sit by and do nothing. The situation in the hall suddenly became tense. Ning Xuema, do you want to rebel? Lu Hin-ti's voice also became cold. Damn it, she didn't get any benefits in this broken country. She really wanted to rebel. However, she was now in the Imperial Garden and only had Kirin and that guard by her side. With this kind of strength, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to try to break out. But if she didn't rebel and was really thrown into prison this time, she wouldn't be as lucky as last time to successfully escape. Because the old emperor felt that she was endangering his country, he obviously wanted to kill her. She was afraid that even if he had to sacrifice this Kirin, he would kill her to prevent future troubles. So this time she definitely couldn't let them throw her into prison. It seemed like she could only fight to the death. She slowly straightened her body and glanced at the group of guards who had rushed in from outside the main hall. She was about to do something. Xuema, don't be impulsive. Imperial Father won't really make things difficult for you. Ji Yunhuang suddenly walked over with large strides and pushed aside the Imperial guards who were blocking the way. He arrived in front of Ning Xuema. Huang, be careful. Lu Hin-ti shouted anxiously. Before he could finish speaking, Ning Xuema had already made her move. She pulled out the treasured sword from Ji Yunhuang's waist and pointed it at Ji Yunhuang's neck. "Your Highness, I apologize." She actually managed to subdue Ji Yunhuang in a single move. Lihin Ti's expression changed. "Ning Xuema, are you really going to rebel? Release the crown prince." Ning Xuema hid behind Ji Yunhuang's back. The sword in her hand was pointed at the artery on Ji Yunhuang's neck. "Your Majesty, it was you who didn't know right from wrong and wanted to kill Xuema." Xuema had no choice but to fight back. "Everyone get out of the way." She steeled her heart and dragged Ji Yunhuang forward. Kirin and the Imperial Guard left behind by Shiju consciously brought up the rear. Since the crown prince was in her hands, the Imperial Guards had no choice but to give way. "Ning Xuema, do you know that if you walk out like this, you will become the enemy of the entire empty country?" Lihin Ti's voice became even colder. "There's no other way. If I don't fight back now, I will be turned into a corpse by your Majesty tomorrow. No matter what, I will still die. Naturally, I have to take a gamble." Ning Xuema was not moved at all. "We only want to bring you to a quiet room to sober up. We have no intention of harming you. After all, there are too many mysteries surrounding you. As long as you can tell us who established the blood contract with you, we will not make things difficult for you." Chapter 397. What if Xuema still can't remember? Ning Xuema's voice became even colder. Then your Majesty will definitely use extreme measures against Xuema, right?" Ning Xuema sneered. "Your Majesty, I can tell you right now. Although I have forgotten who established the blood contract between us, there is one thing that I am certain of. It definitely isn't that red-clothed Guqin player." "How can you be so sure?" Lihin Ti immediately grasped the main point. Ning Xuema was speechless. "Damn it! I must have drunk too much to have actually left such a big loophole." This red-clothed person was released by both her and Kirin. Naturally, he wasn't the one who established the blood contract between her and Kirin. However, she couldn't say this reason. Once she said it, her sin would be even greater. Furthermore, she wasn't sure if the red-clothed Guqin player Shi Tianlong saw was that red-clothed evildoer Shui Yilan. Perhaps it was someone else? After all, there were many capable people in this world. She took a deep breath and calmly replied, "Xuema is naturally certain. As for the reason, perhaps I will give your Majesty an answer in the future." At this time she had already pushed and shoved Ji Yunhuang to the top of the stairs. The top of the stairs was also filled with Imperial bodyguards. They all looked at her with vigilance. Without the Emperor's order, they wouldn't move aside. "Your Majesty, Xuema didn't intend to harm the Crown Prince. However, this is on the condition that you don't push me too far. Tell your people to move aside. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that the sword in my hand won't slip." This sentence was full of threat. Lihin Ti didn't dare to risk his beloved son. He could only order all the Imperial bodyguards to move aside. Ning Xuema and the others took the opportunity to go downstairs. In front of them was the Crown Prince, and behind them was Kirin and the Imperial bodyguard. Naturally, Lihin Ti and the others couldn't do anything. They could only follow them. Ning Xuema quickly arrived at the hall on the first floor. Outside the hall was the 9 winding corridors. As long as she escorted Ji Yunhuang out of this garden and out of the capital, she would be able to escape with Kirin. After all, she was still short, especially when Ji Yunhuang was the tall and straight type. She had to stand on her tiptoes to hold the sword against his neck, which was a bit strenuous. Ji Yunhuang lowered his voice. "You're too tired like this. It'll be safer if you place your sword on my back." Ning Xuema simply wanted to slap her own head. This wine really shouldn't be drunk. Her mind was not a little slow. He kept making common-sense mistakes. As expected, she placed the treasured sword on Ji Yunhuang's back and said in a low voice, "Many thanks." Ji Yunhuang had purposely walked over to be her hostage. She was very clear about this. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to succeed so easily. It seemed like Ji Yunhuang really treated her well and was someone she could befriend. Both of their voices were very soft, almost as if they were transmitting their voices through telepathy. When it left his mouth, it only entered her ears. Other people simply couldn't hear what they were talking about. Ning Xuema was also afraid that everyone would be suspicious of Ji Yunhuang, so she deliberately laughed coldly. "You want me to let you go? Dream on. No matter what, I'll have to ask you to send me out of the city." She lowered her voice and said to Ji Yunhuang alone, "You're a real man, so I'll befriend you. Previously you injured me because of Ji Yunyao, so I won't bicker with you anymore. Ji Yunhuang's eyes slightly darkened. He had never wanted to be her friend. Under Lihin Ti's command, the imperial bodyguards who were blocking the entrance moved aside. Ning Xuema took large strides forward while escorting Ji Yunhuang. Chapter 398. Ning Xuema took large strides forward with Ji Yunhuang in tow. She secretly let out a sigh of relief. It seemed like she had made the right move. She had a chance to escape. Just as she was about to let out a sigh of relief, a light green figure flashed in front of her. Before she could react, she felt her wrist go numb. The sword fell to the ground with a clang. Immediately after, her waist went numb as well. Her entire body was frozen in place, unable to move. "Your Highness, get out of the way!" Someone among the guards shouted. Two people jumped out and pulled Ji Yunhuang away, protecting him in the middle of the group of guards. Ji Yunhuang clenched his fists in his sleeves. At this time he could not use his sword as a hostage. He could only endure and observe the situation. A large number of imperial bodyguards surrounded Ning Xuema and the others. Countless swords and sabers were unsheathed, forming a mountain of swords and sabers around Ning Xuema. As long as she made the slightest move, she would be cut into pieces. Ning Xuema was unable to make any movements. Her body was completely frozen. Only her eyes and neck could move. At this time her gaze was fixed on a person. That person was standing at the entrance of the hall, blocking her only way of escape. Did she really have a deep hatred for this person? Why did he keep plotting against a girl? Lihin Ti's eyes lit up when he saw this person, Master Han. That person was Han Shanyue. His face was still hidden in the shadows so no one could see it clearly. They could only see the sky blue robe on his body fluttering in the wind. He nodded slightly. "Master Han, did you catch the red-clothed zither playing assassin?" Lihin Ti asked. "He escaped." Han Shanyue's answer was very simple. Lihin Ti immediately frowned. That assassin's martial arts were unprecedentedly high. If he escaped now, what would happen if he came back again? The others were also trembling with fear. It was obvious that they were thinking the same thing as Lihin Ti. "Then do you know where that person came from?" "Not human." Lihin Ti and the others were even more shocked as they looked at each other. They naturally knew that there were demons in this world, but they had not seen much of them, especially such a powerful and abnormal demon. Lihin Ti's gaze then shifted to Ning Xuema. The more he looked at her, the stranger he found her. Someone behind him couldn't help but say, "Your Majesty, I'm afraid the current Miss Ning is also a demon." She had changed so much in the past month. Previously she was very cowardly and didn't have much ability. Now that she had so many strange abilities, her appearance had also changed. She was no longer like her. Was she possessed by a demon? "He's in cahoots with that red-clothed zither player, and they're here to cause trouble for our vast sky nation." These words were echoed by many people. A few people knew the former Ning Xuema, and they all pointed out the differences between the current Ning Xuema and the former Ning Xuema. Everyone's mouth was gold, especially at this time. Lihin Ti looked at Ning Xuema with an even colder gaze. "Ning Xuema, what else do you have to say?" At this time, no matter what Ning Xuema said, it would be superfluous. She smiled coldly. "If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Your Majesty wants to convict Xuema based on some baseless conjectures? If Xuema was really a demon, why would she risk her life to save the crown prince? If Xuema was really a demon, then I had countless opportunities to assassinate your Majesty recently, so why didn't I do it? If I was really a demon, why didn't I start a massacre just now?" Chapter 399. Father, Xuema is definitely not a demon. She is truly Marquis Ning's daughter. It can't be wrong. Ji Yunhuang also spoke up. "Yunhuang, how can you be so sure? You should know that demons with high cultivation don't have any demonic aura. If she isn't a demon, then what's with the abnormalities on her body? She can't even say who helped her establish a blood contract with Kirin." "Father, Xuema has already said that she recently received a gift from the heavens. Perhaps there really was an expert who guided her and changed her. Moreover, she really didn't do anything to harm Changkong country. As for the blood contract, perhaps she really can't remember it. Perhaps the expert who established the blood contract for them deliberately erased her memory. It may not be that Xuema deliberately didn't say it. Father, Xuema is Marquis Ning's daughter after all. Recently, she has also made contributions to Changkong country. If it wasn't for her, I would have already lost my life. Father, if you use some groundless accusations to convict her, I'm afraid it will make the other loyal officials bitterly disappointed. Lu Hinti's eyes darkened. Huang, let's not talk about other crimes. Just the fact that she took you as a hostage just now is a great crime worthy of 9 familial exterminations. Jiyun Huang steeled his heart. Father, I volunteered to be her hostage just now. It has nothing to do with her. Here no one spoke up for Ning Xuema. If he didn't plead for her, she would really die. Lu Hinti actually had this suspicion long ago, but he didn't think that his son would have such deep feelings for Ning Xuema. In order to protect her, he actually admitted it in front of everyone. Did he know that with just this sentence, the imperial censors in the imperial court would be able to use it against him and strip him of his position as the crown prince? Was this brat crazy? Lu Hinti's face was as heavy as iron. Nonsense. His gaze once again fell on Ning Xuema. He increasingly felt that she was a perfect example of a jinx, a femme fatale. If she was allowed to continue living, her most outstanding and proud son would really be destroyed in her hands. Take Ning Xuema down first and have the 3 departments interrogate her. If her innocence is proven, we will release her, Lu Hinti instructed. He had already made up his mind to kill Ning Xuema. It was better to get rid of such a troublemaker as soon as possible, to eliminate all future troubles. Imperial Father. Jiyun Huang still wanted to say something. My decision has been made. There's no need to speak anymore. Luxian Emperor waved his hand and ordered the imperial bodyguards to arrest Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema sneered and closed her eyes. Kirin's eyes were red with anger. It and the guard left behind by Shiju stood in front of Ning Xuema, one on the left and one on the right. Whoever dares to touch my master, I will fight them to the death. Kirin bared its fangs and roared. She is someone my master wants to protect. Whoever captures her will be going against my master. The guard also said coldly. Everyone was afraid of breaking the vases. No one was willing to offend the wise king family. If the wise king insisted on protecting Ning Xuema, they really wouldn't dare to make a move. After looking at each other, their gazes turned to Lu Hinti. Lu Hinti's face became even darker. Guard Xia, she is a person of my Changkong Empire. Moreover, she is of great importance. You definitely can't let her go. I'm sorry for today. In the future we will naturally give your master an explanation. He waved his hand at the imperial guards. The scales on Kirin's body had already exploded. Its eyes were wide open and it already had the intention to fight to the death. The atmosphere in the hall became tense. A bloody battle was about to break out. Your Majesty, I agree to your conditions. Chapter 400. Your Majesty, I agree to your conditions. Han Shanyue, who had been sitting on the wall, suddenly opened his mouth. Lu Hinti was stunned. When he realized what he heard, he was overjoyed. Even his eyes lit up. That's great. Thank you, sir. No, it's Heavenly Master. I will prepare everything for you. He was so happy that he started to speak incoherently. Han Shanyue was someone that all the countries wanted to rope in. Who knew how many monarchs had offered him amazing conditions to recruit him as a heavenly master, but they were all rejected by him. This time, when he came to Changkong country, Lu Hinti had been thinking of ways to make him stay, but he had no intention of agreeing. Although Lu Hinti felt regretful, he could not do anything about it. Everyone said that Han Shanyue's martial arts were unpredictable. Everyone had only heard of it before, but now they finally saw it for themselves. If not for him today, he and the ministers would have been wiped out by the red-clothed zither master. Now that he thought about it, he still felt a lingering fear. What's more, that red-clothed zither player had run away. Who knew if he would return? Luxian Emperor was originally very worried about this hidden danger, but now, all of his worries were swept away. As long as Han Shanyue stayed here, why would he be afraid of the red-clothed zither master? However, I also have a condition. Han Shanyue spat out another sentence. Sir, please state your conditions, I will agree. Han Shanyue finally looked at Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema only felt the hair on her back stand up. She glared at him hatefully. Ning Xuema, do you hate me? Han Shanyue finally opened his mouth. Ning Xuema sneered and did not speak. Was there a need to answer? She now had the heart to tear him into pieces. Her attitude caused the corners of Han Shanyue's mouth to curl up slightly. He then proposed an outrageous condition to Emperor Luxian. Your Majesty, I lack a concubine who can grind ink and serve tea. I think she's not bad. I beg your Majesty to give her to me. Lu Hinti, everyone. This was the expression one would get if they were struck by lightning. Ning Xuema also opened her eyes wide and looked at Han Shangyue as if he was crazy. Lu Hinti calmed himself down and said, "Sir, didn't you say that she's a jinx and is destined to jinx her husband? What's wrong? My life is tougher than hers." Han Shangyue answered indifferently. It meant that his life was tougher than hers, so he wasn't afraid of death. Lu Hinti regained his composure. "Sir, it's not that I don't want to agree. I'm just curious. With your character and status, what kind of woman can't you have? Why must she be a cursed loner? It would be bad if she were to jinx her master. Mister, why don't you reconsider other women?" His gaze swept across the women present. "We believe that no matter who you choose, she will be extremely happy." These words were not false at all. No matter if it was in terms of talent or status, Han Shangyue was every girl's dream lover. Not to mention being his concubines, even if he asked them to warm his bed, they would be more than happy to do so. All the women present immediately stepped forward, intentionally or otherwise, to make themselves more conspicuous. Han Shangyue did not see their interest at all. He only said, "I have high aspirations. I don't like ordinary women and I don't want to jinx them." The faces of the women present turned pale and they shrank back. Lu Hinti was slightly embarrassed. But, Han Shangyue glanced at him indifferently. "Your Majesty, don't worry. Although my life is tough, it will only jinx my wife and not others." Chapter 401. Han Shangyue looked at Ning Xuema and said, "I might be able to defeat her." Everyone was speechless. Lu Hinti said, "This, Your Majesty, if you can't even agree to such a small request." Han Shanyue's voice turned cold. This requires my consent, right?" Lu Hinti struggled to say. He felt that something was wrong but he couldn't tell what it was. If not for the ancestor saying that Ning Xuema was a 1,000-year loner, he would have thought that Han Shanyue had ulterior motives when he said that Ning Xuema was a heavenly calamity loner. Everyone's eyes were on Ning Xuema. There was envy, jealousy, and surprise in their eyes. They all felt that Ning Xuema would definitely agree. After all, this was her only chance to escape today. Ning Xuema felt that Han Shanyue's head must have been kicked by a donkey. Otherwise he must be mentally ill. At this time she was still feeling tipsy. Alcohol could easily make people lose their cool, so she simply replied, "I won't marry a lunatic. Don't talk about making her a concubine. Even if this person used a palanquin to marry her, she still wouldn't marry him." Lu Hinti sighed in relief. Today he had completely offended Ning Xuema, so he would rather destroy her than let her stay by Han Shanyue's side. "Mr. Han, you see she herself doesn't agree." Han Shanyue glanced at Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema stared at him coldly. It was unknown whether it was because of anger or the alcohol, but her face was red. "She hasn't sobered up yet. I believe that she will give me the answer I want tomorrow," Han Shanyue said calmly. Lu Hinti frowned. "If she doesn't agree tomorrow, I believe that Your Majesty will have a way to make her agree." Han Shanyue's voice became more leisurely. "If I don't get a satisfactory answer tomorrow, I will have to ask Your Majesty to find someone else." After saying this he turned and left. Just as he walked out of the door he turned back. "What I want tomorrow is a concubine who is nimble, efficient, and intelligent. I believe that Your Majesty will not disappoint me." His sleeves fluttered as he left. Lu Hinti, in this special period of time, he couldn't offend this Mr. Han Shanyue, so he could only follow his request. His gaze landed on Ning Xuema's body. This time he really had a headache. How could he convince her? She couldn't do that. She wouldn't be nimble and efficient tomorrow. Therefore he could only convince her. However, looking at Ning Xuema's stubborn appearance, it seemed like she would not be easy to convince. Moreover, this girl's eloquence was not ordinary. She had the ability to battle a group of scholars with words. He was afraid that even if he tied up all the imperial censors under his command, they would not be her match. Moreover, he had thoroughly offended her. What a headache. He waved his hand. "Find a clean room for Miss Ning to rest. We'll talk about it tomorrow." This time he couldn't let the guards arrest Ning Xuema. Of course he couldn't put her in jail. Instead, he let the maids help her to a clean room to sober up. Ning Xuema's acupuncture points had not been unsealed yet, so she couldn't struggle. When the guards saw that her life was no longer in danger, they were relieved and let the maids help Ning Xuema. Kirin wanted to stop them but Ning Xuema used telepathy to stop it. Chapter 402. Before she agreed, Lihin Ti would not let her go and would only put her under house arrest. Moreover, she was exhausted, so it was better for her to rest for a night. Xuema made up her mind. Ji Yunhuang clenched his fists tightly and his handsome face turned green. Naturally, he did not want Ning Xuema to marry someone else. Not to mention a concubine. But in the current situation he could not give her any promises. He only hated that he was not strong enough. He turned around and left. Huang, where are you going? Lihin Ti felt that his son's expression was not right. Ji Yunhuang did not say anything and did not even look back. He just walked away with large strides. Lihin Ti. Although this son of his was always cold, it was the first time he left in a huff. A lively garden party ended so miserably. Everyone tactfully said their goodbyes and left. In a rather luxurious palace. There were heavy guards outside the palace. Even a fly would not be able to enter and leave as it pleased. Ning Xuema was lazily lying on the bed, half leaning on the bedpost. Her eyes were closed and she seemed to be asleep. The little Qilin still turned into a blue cat and curled up at her feet. It curled up into a ball and fell into a deep sleep. The curtains of the bed had already been pulled down. Outside the curtains knelt an eloquent imperial censor. He had already knelt there for more than half an hour, spittle flying everywhere as he spoke. In the end, Ning Xuema didn't even feel like replying to him. Not to mention agreeing to that condition. This girl had clearly drunk the hangover soup and was awake, but she did not respond to him. This was already the third imperial censor called by the emperor. The first two had left with their tails between their legs. This imperial censor, who was known to be able to bring a dead person back to life, had been nagging for half a day. He had said all the good and bad things but there was still no effect. He could only leave with his tail between his legs. Lihin Ti obviously wanted to use the human wave tactic. When one person came out, another immediately went in. Just like that, the imperial censors changed 7 or 8 times in a row, each of them nearly breaking their lips from talking, but Ning Xuema just didn't say anything. He just sat there with his eyes closed and didn't even have the intention to open them. Although they could threaten Ning Xuema from all sides, they didn't dare to do anything to her. One by one they came in high spirits but returned dejectedly. Lihin Ti was waiting in a side hall nearby. However, as the imperial censors returned one by one, his heart sank. He had never met anyone as difficult to deal with as Ning Xuema. A 13-year-old girl was actually unmoved by force or persuasion. It seemed like she was certain that he wouldn't dare to torture her. Damn it. He really didn't dare. This was the first time Lihin Ti had encountered such a difficult bone to chew. He paced around in the side chamber. The eunuchs around him wanted to persuade him to rest, but they were all yelled at by him. Han Shanyue gave him a deadline of tomorrow morning, so he really didn't have much time left. He originally wanted to find Ji Yunhuang, who had a good relationship with Ning Xuema, to persuade her, but the eunuch who sent the message came back and reported that they couldn't find the crown prince's whereabouts. No one knew where he went. The people who went to search for the red-clothed zither player also didn't have any news. It was obvious that they hadn't found his whereabouts yet. Just because he didn't appear didn't mean that he had left. Lihin Ti didn't dare to take this risk. In the end, all the imperial censors were defeated by Ning Xuema. Even the Supreme Court official Lan Yufeng didn't have any effect. Chapter 403. With no other choice, Lihin Ti gritted his teeth and decided to do it himself. In order to keep a talent like Han Shanyue, he was willing to give it his all. Ning Xuema was really tired, so she was only half awake and half asleep. Those words of the imperial censor were all in one ear and the other out the other. She simply did not take them to heart. She was actually thinking about what she should do after she sobered up. If she didn't agree, she wouldn't be able to keep her life. Han Shanyue, that pervert, was very domineering with his acupuncture points. Although she could move freely now, she didn't have much strength left. She could only sit like an ordinary person and couldn't use any power. The guard sent by Shiju saw that her life wasn't in danger and left in the middle of the night. He must have gone to report to his master. As for Kirin, with its current ability, it couldn't carry her out of the heavily guarded palace unscathed. Moreover, even if she was lucky enough to escape, what about the people in the Ning residence? They would probably become cannon fodder. Concubine. Concubine. Was she destined to be a concubine in this life? The sixth prince wanted her to be a concubine, the old emperor wanted her to be a beast concubine, and even that red-clothed evildoer wanted her to be a concubine. Crown Prince Ji Yunhuang was indeed interested in her, but she couldn't be his official concubine. As for Shiju, that child looked cold on the surface but was actually very passionate. He was really good to her and was willing to do anything for her. However, he was after all the wise king's son. Even if she was interested in him, she wouldn't be able to get past his family. After all, no one dared to take the risk and let a heavenly cursed loner marry into their family. Ning Xuema silently thought about all the suitors in this era. None of them actually wanted to marry her as their official concubine. She couldn't help but feel sad. She touched her nose and sighed softly. She lowered her head and looked at her own body. Was this the fate of a heavenly beauty? She was only 13 years old and was already being forced to marry Han Shanyue, that pervert. What did he think of her? Why did he do this? She thought about Han Shanyue's feelings but still couldn't figure it out. She decided not to think about it anymore. As dawn approached, Lihin Ti finally arrived. A eunuch shouted at the door, "Long live the emperor has arrived." His voice was loud enough, but Ning Xuema didn't give him any face at all. She didn't even have the intention to get up, let alone kneel to greet him. The old emperor stood at the door for a moment, waved his hand in a pretentious gesture and then walked in. He found himself a chair and sat down, preparing to have a long talk. The maid serving at the side hung up the bed curtain. The emperor was here, so it was obviously inappropriate to hang up the bed curtain. Lihin Ti looked at Ning Xuema, who was still lying under the quilt. It was simply impossible. He went straight to the point. "Ning Xuema, you should know that you have to agree to this even if you don't want to. What conditions do you have? Just state them." Ning Xuema said indifferently, "I don't have any conditions. I'd rather die than marry that pervert." This was the first time someone called Master Han Shanyue a pervert. Lihin Ti said coldly, "It doesn't matter if you're not afraid of death. Aren't you afraid that your entire Ning family will be executed? Your Majesty, go ahead and execute them. It's best if you kill all 9 generations of my family." Ning Xuemo replied indifferently. The Ning family had nothing to do with her at all. "Monthly tickets, recommendation tickets, do you want them in my pocket?" Chapter 404. Lixian Emperor was choked by her words for a moment. He could only find a way out of this embarrassing situation. "Your father, Marquis Jing Yuan, has made great contributions to the vast Sky Empire. Because of his face, we will not be so ruthless. However, your stubbornness really disappoints me. We won't kill your entire family, but that old Zhong was the one who raised you, so it's unavoidable that he wasn't strict enough in teaching you. If you don't agree, we can only kill him." When he said the last sentence, there was a murderous look in his eyes. Ning Xuema did not buy it. "I have never heard of a servant being able to control his master. However, if your Majesty wants to use him to threaten Xuema, Xuema does not care. I don't even care about my own life. Why would I care about other people's lives?" Lihin Ti said, "Ning Xuema, if you do not agree, only death awaits you." And the left assistant minister who just left also said that. Xuema said that she does not care. "Ning Xuema, even ants cherish their lives, not to mention you. You are only 13 years old, there is still a great future waiting for you." An imperial censor may also said that just now. Ning Xuema's voice was still indifferent. "How is Master Han not good enough? You don't know how many girls in this world want to marry him, but he has never looked at them. You being able to marry him is a great blessing. I will give this blessing to others. Whoever wants to marry can marry, Xuema does not care." This girl was simply too stubborn. The veins on Lihin Ti's forehead were throbbing. He used both the carrot and the stick to persuade her for an hour, but Ning Xuema only replied with a few words. In the end, Lihin Ti was about to lose all hope. If he could not take down Ning Xuema, he could not keep Han Shanyue. If he could not keep Han Shanyue, there would be no one to deal with that mysterious red-clothed zither player. His country and even his life would be in danger. That Han Shanyue had simply given him a super difficult problem to solve. In the end, he had no choice but to send everyone out. Afterwards, he lowered his voice and bowed to Ning Xuema. "Great aunt, in the end, what do you want? Tell me and I will agree. You are also a citizen of vast Sky Empire, and your father has been loyal all his life. You can't just watch vast Sky Empire citizens fall into a dangerous situation, right?" Ning Xuema glanced at him and pursed her lips. "What does it matter if they are loyal subjects? Isn't His Majesty going to kill a loyal descendant for a groundless crime? I didn't want to kill you, but I have truly let you down." Emperor Lixian still spoke in a low voice. "You think a simple sorry is enough? What do you want?" "His Majesty, Marquis, 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 Martyr, Martyr, Martyrs, martyr, 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 martyrs, martyr, 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 martyr. Was she willing to raise her conditions? Did she relent? Lahinti was secretly happy. He nodded and agreed, "Good, as long as you agree to marry Master Han as a concubine, I will agree to your condition." Ning Xuema narrowed her eyes and slowly said, "Your Majesty, this is what you should do. It is not Xuema's condition. However, Xuema can agree to consider this." Lahinti. He could only bargain with Ning Xuema again. Lahinti realized that once this little girl was awake, her words were watertight. She was also a good negotiator. During the negotiations, Luxian Emperor had unknowingly agreed to a bunch of conditions that made him regret it so much that his intestines turned green. Chapter 405. For example, giving Ning Xuema a permanent death exemption medallion and a reward of 100,000 taels of gold to the Marquis Jingyuan's residence. No matter when or where, she would not need to pay respects to any member of the royal family. Even if she met the emperor, she would not need to kneel. She would renovate the Marquis Jingyuan's residence and double its size. She would set up a horse memorial arch and a horse memorial arch in front of the Marquis Jingyuan's residence. As long as they passed by her residence, the civil officials would get off their palanquins and the military officials would get off their horses. Furthermore, she would be able to borrow all kinds of books from the imperial palace. The most important condition was that she would be given the Moonlight Cauldron, a medicine furnace from the treasure pavilion of the imperial palace. The other conditions were still acceptable. Lahinti gritted his teeth and agreed to all of them. Only the last condition was not worth it. The Moonlight Cauldron was passed down by his ancestors. It was said that it could refine all kinds of medicine and even the elixir of immortality. Of course, this was just a rumor passed down and no one had confirmed it yet. This was because the structure of the Moonlight Cauldron was not ordinary and there seemed to be a seal on it. Jianghu country's best pharmacist was unable to unlock its functions and could not even use it to refine ordinary medicine. However, this did not mean that the Moonlight Cauldron was not a treasure. This cauldron was kept in the imperial palace and not many people in the world knew about it. Lahinti did not understand how Ning Xuema found out that the cauldron was with him. Could it be that Ji Yunhuang told her? Although Lahinti was not willing to part with it, he had no choice but to give it to her at this time. In the end, Ning Xuema finally relented. She said that she could consider marrying Han Shanyue, but the precondition was that she had to talk with him again. After talking for a while, she would decide whether to marry him or not. Luxian Emperor simply wanted to cry. He had agreed to so many humiliating conditions, but in the end he only managed to get an ambiguous answer from her. However, it was good that she relented. This was a good sign. Everything would wait until Han Shanyue arrived. He was actually quite curious about what Ning Xuema would discuss with Han Shanyue. What would Han Shanyue agree to? When the morning sun finally rose, the sky was bright red. Han Shanyue finally floated over. No one knew where he had spent the night. Lahinti had secretly sent people to search for him, but to no avail. He seemed to have suddenly appeared outside the garden, and then leisurely went to see Lahinti under the guidance of a young eunuch. Lahinti naturally told him how difficult it was to convince Ning Xuema. Finally, he told him about Ning Xuema's condition. She wanted to see him before agreeing. Han Shanyue had been quietly listening. When Emperor Luxian finished speaking, he slightly nodded his head and opened his golden mouth. "Then your Majesty can prepare for this heavenly teacher's wedding." Lahinti was a little stunned. "Sir, no, Heavenly Master, didn't you want to take her as your concubine?" Normally, when a concubine is taken in, a small sedan chair will carry the concubine into the mansion. Han Shanyue glanced at him indifferently. "Am I a normal person?" This sentence made Lahinti choke. Fine, a wedding is a wedding. He didn't mind holding a wedding for someone else. What kind of wedding does Heavenly Master want? Just a little. Let's hold it as the grandest wedding in Jianghu country. Han Shanyue indicated that he was easy to talk to. Lahinti was speechless. He didn't sleep the whole night. He already had a headache, but now he felt it was even more painful. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.